When June Mercer came home from the dentist, her bed was in the garage, not the spare bed, not the narrow cot Walter used after his knee surgery. Her bed, the maple frame she and Walter had bought for their 20th anniversary. The mattress they had argued over because he liked one firm enough to qualify as lumber. It stood between his workbench and 3 towers of plastic storage bins, fully made with June's blue quilt. Someone had even placed her reading lamp on a folding TV tray. Its cord stretched across the concrete to an outlet beside the freezer. For a moment, June thought the Novocaine had done something to her brain. Then Kyle opened the door from the kitchen, carrying an armful of June's dresses. "There you are," he said. "We were hoping to have this finished before you got back." Behind him, Tessa called, "Don't let Mom trip over that cord." June touched her tongue to the dead side of her mouth. "Why is my bed in the garage?" Kyle looked down at the dresses as if they might answer for him. Tessa appeared behind him with a little wooden sign that said, "Bless this mess." She had taken it from the laundry room. "Before you get upset, come see what we did." The terrible thing was that both of them looked pleased. June did not move. Cold seeped through the soles of her shoes. The garage smelled of gasoline, old grass clippings, and the damp cardboard box where Walter had kept extension cords he never wound properly. Tessa's smile tightened. "It's temporary. So was Kyle sleeping on my sofa." "Mom," Kyle said. "What?" He glanced toward the driveway, though nobody was there to overhear. "You don't have to say it like that." Her cheek was beginning to tingle. She could feel every pulse in the tooth the dentist had just spent 90 minutes drilling. "How should I say it?" Tessa put down the sign. "Can we please go inside?" June followed because her purse was still on her shoulder, and because standing in her own garage while her adult children negotiated her location made her feel foolish in a way she could not yet name. The living room looked larger without the fold-out sofa open. Kyle had slept there for 4 months, though slept was not quite the word. He stayed up watching television until 2, fell asleep with the remote on his chest, and woke whenever June made coffee. Each morning he shuffled into the kitchen, rubbing his lower back and saying, "That couch is killing me." Now the blankets were gone. So were his duffel bags, his shoes, the row of shirts he had hung from the curtain rod because the guest room closet was full of Walter's clothes. Tessa pointed down the hall. "Go look." June did. Her bedroom had become Kyle's bedroom. His gray comforter was spread over the mattress from the guest room, which had been moved onto June's maple bed frame. His television stood on Walter's dresser. A laundry basket of Kyle's clothes occupied the corner where June's upholstered chair had been. Kyle came up behind her. "It just makes more sense." June looked at Walter's dresser. On the top, beside Kyle's deodorant and a bottle of antacid, was the shallow ceramic dish where Walter had dropped his keys every night for 31 years. "Where are my things?" "We moved most of them," Tessa said. "Your everyday clothes are on the garment rack in the garage. The rest are in bins." "You went through my clothes? We didn't throw anything away. That wasn't my question." Tessa exhaled and folded her arms. She was 43 years old, but frustration still pulled her mouth into the same shape it had when she was a teenager, and June refused to change an answer. "This is exactly why I wanted to explain it first. Kyle can't keep sleeping on that sofa. He has interviews. He needs decent rest. I had a crown put in this morning. That's not the same thing." "No," June said. "I suppose it isn't." Kyle set her dresses across the foot of his new bed. One sleeve trailed on the carpet. "You wake up at 5 anyway. You said yourself you barely sleep in there since Dad died." June stared at him. He looked away first. That came out wrong. It had not come out wrong. It had come out cleanly, which was worse. Since Walter's funeral, June had learned that grief made certain people nervous enough to become efficient. Tessa had arrived with labels. She labeled the casseroles, the sympathy cards, the medicines on June's bathroom counter. She created 3 piles of Walter's belongings: keep, donate, decide later. Almost everything June touched landed in decide later, as if her hands were no longer qualified to make permanent choices. Kyle's grief was quieter and somehow took up more room. He sat in Walter's recliner and watched old baseball games with the sound low. Sometimes June found him asleep there, his face slack in a way that made him look like the boy he had been, though he was a broad, graying man with a bad habit of leaving cabinet doors open. Other days, he spoke of Walter as if they had been business partners instead of a father and son who loved each other and could not spend 40 minutes together without arguing about motor oil. June had made room for both kinds of grief. She had not understood that they were measuring the room. Tessa walked past her into the hallway. "Come on, the garage looks better than you think." "I've seen the garage. You haven't seen all of it. There was more." They had cleared a rectangle around June's bed and put down the braided rug from the den. Her chair sat in one corner beside a space heater still in its box. The garment rack was positioned against the metal garage door. Every time the door rose, June's dresses would be displayed to the street. Tessa switched on the reading lamp. "See? Cozy." The bulb gave off a yellow circle that ended at the concrete. Kyle nudged the rug flat with his shoe. "We can get one of those room divider things." "For what?" "Privacy." From the lawnmower, we were trying to make this work for everybody. June looked at the interior door. "There's no bathroom." "It's 10 steps to the half bath," Tessa said. 14. "What?" "It's 14. I counted them when your father was using his walker." Neither of them spoke. June touched the edge of the quilt. Tessa had made the bed carefully, hospital corners and all. That might have been the most insulting detail. If they had dumped the mattress against the wall, June could have called it thoughtlessness. But Tessa had carried out the lamp. Kyle had moved the chair. They had stood together in the garage and decided where their mother should sleep. "Whose idea was this?" June asked. Kyle rubbed his jaw. Tessa said, "It wasn't like that. That means yours." "No, it means we talked about the problem like adults, without the adult who owns the bed. Mom, nobody is taking anything from you." June looked around the garage. Tessa's face changed. For half a second, something uncertain passed through it, but then Kyle said, "It's just until I get back on my feet," and the uncertainty disappeared. June had heard that sentence before. After Kyle left his sales job to open a sandwich shop with a man named Russ, it was just until the business found its feet. When Russ vanished with most of the equipment, it was just until the debt was settled. After Kyle's wife Denise told him she could no longer live inside one of his temporary situations, it was just until they cooled off. 4 months earlier, June had opened her door and said, "Stay as long as you need." Walter would have objected. That thought came sharp and immediate. Walter had loved Kyle, but he believed a soft landing should have a departure date. He would have let their son stay 2 weeks, then stood over him with a legal pad and a list of apartments. June had always considered that unkind. Walter had always considered June's way dangerous. She could almost hear him now. "June, honey, you have confused kindness with an all-you-can-eat buffet." A laugh escaped her before she could stop it. Kyle frowned. "What's funny, my mouth is numb. That doesn't make people laugh." "It does now." Tessa stepped closer and lowered her voice, taking the tone she used when she wanted June to believe the two of them were on the same team. "I know this feels sudden. I told Kyle we should wait, but his interview is Thursday and he hasn't had one full night's sleep. You know how much stress he's under." June nodded slowly. Kyle relaxed. "And I don't have any stress at all," she said. His shoulders dropped again. "Nobody said that. You don't have to. You put a lamp in the garage." Tessa pinched the bridge of her nose. "Please don't turn this into something cruel." June looked at her daughter for a long moment. "I'm not sure I'm the one doing that." The silence that followed was broken by the freezer rattling on. Walter had bought it secondhand from a restaurant that closed, and it had announced every cooling cycle with a shudder ever since. He used to slap the lid and say, "Still alive," as if congratulating an elderly horse. June's tooth began to ache in earnest. "I'm going to take my medicine," she said. "Okay," Tessa answered too quickly. "Good. Then we'll order dinner, something soft." That was how the matter was settled in their minds. June could tell by the relief moving through the room. They had expected tears, maybe shouting. They had prepared themselves to endure her reaction. Her calm felt like permission. She took the prescribed tablet with a glass of water and sat at the kitchen table while Tessa ordered chicken soup from the diner. Kyle moved the last of his things down the hall. He whistled while he worked, not cheerfully exactly, but with the energy of a man who had survived a difficult conversation and been rewarded with a bedroom. Tessa stayed until nearly 9. Before leaving, she squeezed June's shoulder. "Give it one night," she said. "You might like having your own little space." June looked up at her. "I had my own space." Tessa kissed the top of her head as if June had not spoken. At 10, Kyle locked the front door. At 10:15, June brushed her teeth in the half bath, careful around the temporary crown. At 10:30, she changed into her nightgown in the garage while holding Walter's old wool coat in front of the small window in the driveway door. The concrete cold rose through the rug. When she turned off the lamp, the green lights on the freezer glowed beside her like a pair of watchful eyes. She lay beneath the quilt without undressing further. On the other side of the wall, Kyle's television murmured in her bedroom. Once she heard him laugh. June closed her eyes and saw the Mercer farm as it had looked the previous October when she and Walter drove out to meet Naomi Bell about renewing the pasture lease. The farmhouse gutters sagged. Golden weeds crowded the porch. Walter stood in the yard with his hands on his hips, looking happier than he had in months. "We could still do it," he had said. June had looked toward the long, empty road. The kids would never come. Walter shrugged. "They say that like it's a threat." She had laughed then, too. In the garage, June opened her eyes. She waited until the television went silent. Then she got up, put on her robe, and went into the kitchen. From the drawer beside the refrigerator, she took the farm folder with the utility numbers, the pasture agreement, and the handwritten name of the man who checked the well. She set it on the table and went back for her suitcase. The suitcase had been stored on the shelf above the garage workbench, behind a box labeled Christmas Outdoor. June lowered it carefully, though the wheels still knocked against the wall. She froze. Nothing moved inside the house. On the garment rack, her clothes hung in the order Kyle had carried them out, dresses mixed with bathrobes and Walter's old red flannel shirt. She took the shirt, 2 pairs of slacks, underwear, socks, 3 blouses, and the navy cardigan with deep pockets. Then she changed her mind and packed enough for a week. She had no idea what she was doing. The thought did not stop her hands. Her medications were in the bathroom. Her checkbook and insurance cards were in her desk. The truck title, house papers, and Walter's death certificates were in a small metal file box at the back of her closet, which was now Kyle's closet. She stood in the hallway looking at the closed bedroom door. Walter's dresser clock read 1:17 in red numerals through the crack beneath it. June opened the door. Kyle slept on his side, with his back to her, 1 foot uncovered. The television flickered silently, throwing blue light over the room. His phone rested on the pillow beside him. He had moved into her room so completely that he had already left an empty water bottle on her nightstand. The file box was behind a row of Kyle's shirts. June lifted it without touching anything else. As she turned, the ceramic key dish caught the television light. Kyle had dropped loose change into it. June looked at his sleeping shape and felt a strange tenderness she did not want. He had been a restless sleeper from the beginning. At 8, he once rolled out of a hotel bed and kept sleeping on the floor. At 29, after a bad flu, he had called June because he could not remember whether he had taken his medicine. At 46, he had placed his mother in a garage because the sofa hurt his back. People did not become one thing and stay that way. It would have been easier if they did. She took Walter's ceramic dish. In the kitchen, she packed her medicine, phone charger, and the blue mug Walter had used every morning, despite the crack near the handle. She added half a loaf of bread, peanut butter, 2 apples, and the unopened package of sliced cheese. The refrigerator held plenty. Kyle would not starve unless he worked at it. She wrote the note on the back of one of Tessa's lists. "Kyle, I will not sleep in my garage. Since you need the house, you will cover the electric, gas, water, groceries, and anything else you use for the next 30 days. After that, we will discuss what happens next. Tessa, do not move, donate, label, sort, improve, or decide anything else in my house. I am safe. I have my phone. Mom." She read it twice, added, "Please feed the plants, then cross that out." The plants had survived Walter's neglect for years. They could endure Kyle. June put the note in the middle of the kitchen table and weighted it with the sugar bowl. By the back door, she slipped on Walter's insulated jacket over her robe. She carried the first load to the pickup, came back, dressed in the half bath, and carried out the rest. At 2:06, she backed down the driveway. The garage door was still open. June stopped at the curb. In the rearview mirror, the light over her displaced bed made a weak yellow square in the darkness. Anybody driving past would see it. Bed, lamp, chair, dresses. A complete little life arranged beside the freezer. She considered going back to close the door. Then she pictured the motor waking Kyle, pictured him coming outside barefoot, apologizing just enough to get her back into the kitchen. She drove away. At that hour, the town belonged to delivery trucks and traffic lights changing for nobody. June passed the diner where Walter used to order sausage against medical advice, the bank, the dark windows of the hardware store. At the edge of town, she stopped at a 24-hour gas station and filled the pickup. The young-looking cashier might have been 30, but June refused to examine him closely enough to turn him into somebody's child. He glanced at her suitcase through the glass doors. "Headed somewhere good?" he asked. "I'll know when I get there." He grinned as if she had made a joke. The highway narrowed after 20 miles. The radio found a country station, lost it, then settled into static. June switched it off. Without the noise, she could hear the thermos Walter had left behind, the seat rolling gently from side to side. She had not visited the farm since the week before he died. He had complained of indigestion all the way home. June had offered to drive, but he told her not to fuss. The next afternoon, he collapsed beside the laundry room sink while trying to repair a dripping hose connection. By the time the ambulance arrived, the man who never threw away a screw because it might be useful had left behind half a sandwich, an unpaid water bill, and a farmhouse key on his truck ring. June gripped the steering wheel until the ache in her tooth sharpened. "Don't start," she said aloud. Whether she meant herself or Walter, she could not have said. The last stretch followed a creek through low-wooded hills. Fog gathered in the hollows. Twice, deer appeared at the edge of the headlights, their eyes bright and offended. June slowed to 40. The farm gate was farther from the road than she remembered. She drove past it, muttered a word Walter would have admired, and turned around in the parking lot of a closed feed store. Mercer Farm was still faintly visible on the wooden sign, though the M had faded more than the other letters. The gate chain was not locked. Naomi Bell moved sheep between the lower and upper pastures and had asked them to leave it that way. June drove up the gravel lane with the pickup bouncing hard enough to rattle her new crown. The headlights swept over tall grass, fence posts, the sagging roofline of the machine shed. Then the farmhouse appeared. In the dark, it looked smaller. She parked by the porch and left the engine running while she found the correct key. The porch light did not come on. When June climbed the steps, one board gave a soft, rotten sigh under her right foot. "Good morning to you too," she said. The key stuck. She leaned her shoulder against the door, turned it harder, and nearly fell inside when the swollen wood released. The house smelled of dust, cold stone, and something faintly animal. June found the switch beside the door. Nothing happened. She tried the next switch. A ceiling fixture flickered awake over the front room, illuminating sheet-covered furniture and a drift of dead flies on the windowsill. "Still alive?" she whispered. The furnace was another question. So was the water. June decided both questions could wait until daylight. She brought in the suitcase, food, file box, and Walter's mug. The folding cot was supposed to be in the downstairs bedroom, but she found it leaning behind the dining room door beneath two rolled window screens. Opening it required knees, patience, and language she had not used since Walter tried to assemble a gas grill without instructions. By the time June spread an old sofa cover over the canvas, she was sweating inside Walter's jacket. She sat on the edge. The cot dipped toward the middle. Her phone showed 9 missed calls. The first had come from Kyle at 6:38. Tessa began calling 4 minutes later, then tried again at 6:44, 6:46, and 6:51. 3 text messages waited beneath them. "Where are you? Mom, answer, please. This is not okay." June stared at the last one until the words blurred. She typed, "I told you I am safe." The phone rang before she could put it down. Tessa did not say hello. "Where are you?" "At the farm." There was a pause. June could hear a turn signal clicking on Tessa's end. "The farm? We only have the one." "Why would you go there in the middle of the night?" "Less traffic." "Mom, my tooth hurts, Tessa." "Then you should be home, not sitting in some abandoned house." "It isn't abandoned. I'm in it. Does the heat work? I haven't checked." "Oh my God." June held the phone away from her ear. "That is not helpful. Kyle woke up and found your note. He thought you'd driven into a ditch." "I did not drive into a ditch. How were we supposed to know that?" "The note said I was safe. A note isn't a tracking device." "No, it is not." Tessa made a breathy, furious sound. "You could have talked to us." June looked at the bare bulb over the dining table. I did. No, you made sarcastic comments and then disappeared. I asked why my bed was in the garage, and I explained that. You explained it so well that the bed stayed there. On the other end, the turn signal stopped. A car horn sounded, followed by Tessa saying something June could not make out. Are you driving? June asked. I'm heading to your house. My house? You know what I mean. Yes, June said. I am beginning to. Don't do that. Kyle is upset. Kyle is in my bedroom. He was going to move everything back. June pictured the empty bottle on her nightstand, the change in Walter's dish. Was he? Of course he was. You didn't give us a chance. A chance to discover the garage is not a bedroom? It was for one night. Nobody had said that the day before. Temporary could mean a night, a month, or until June died of old age beside the lawnmower. Tessa's voice softened. Come home. We'll fix it. June glanced around the dim dining room. Wallpaper peeled beside the window in long, curled strips. A mouse had left black grains across the mantel. The old refrigerator in the kitchen was silent, and somewhere inside the wall, something scratched once and stopped. I'm tired, she said. Then come home and sleep. Where? Tessa went quiet. June closed her eyes. Mom, Tessa said at last, I'm sorry it looked bad. It looked exactly like what it was. That's not fair. No, it wasn't. The words landed between them with more force than June intended. Tessa's breathing changed. For a moment, June almost apologized. Instead, she said, I'm going to check the heat. I'll call this afternoon. Wait, Kyle wants to talk to you. I don't want to talk to Kyle. He's right here. There was muffled movement, then Kyle's voice came through, rough with sleep and indignation. Mom, what the hell? June's hand tightened around the phone. You scared us to death, he said. I left a note. You took the truck. It's my truck. What am I supposed to drive? There it was, small and clean as a pin dropped on tile. June looked toward the front window. Dawn had begun to thin the darkness. Beyond the glass, the upper pasture emerged in gray layers, and several sheep stood in the mist facing the house. You'll work something out, she said. She ended the call before either of them could tell her what kind of mother that made her. The furnace started after 3 tries, producing a metallic groan and the smell of burned dust. The kitchen tap coughed air, then released a stream the color of weak tea. June let it run. She found a broom. She swept the dead flies, wiped the table, and carried her food into the kitchen. The refrigerator clicked when she plugged it in, though she did not trust it with the cheese. By 7, the windows had turned gold at the edges. June poured bottled water into Walter's mug and sat on the porch step. The grass glittered with frost. Smoke rose from a chimney beyond the lower pasture, probably Naomi's house. The sheep had lost interest in June and moved downhill together, their backs making pale ripples through the fog. The place was cold, shabby, and too quiet. For the first time since leaving town, there was nobody to witness what she did next. June lowered her face into Walter's jacket and began to cry. She cried until the cold found the gap between her pajama pants and her socks. It was an undignified thing to notice, but once she noticed, she could not stop noticing. Cold air slid around her ankles. The porch step pressed hard against her hip. Her nose was running, and Walter's jacket sleeve was too rough to wipe it with. June lifted her head. One of Naomi Bell's sheep had wandered closer to the fence. It stared at her with the grave, unimpressed face of an old churchwoman. Oh, hush, June told it. The sheep chewed. June found a tissue in the jacket pocket. It had gone through the wash at least once and came out in small white flakes when she opened it. Beneath it was a peppermint fused to its wrapper and a hardware store receipt dated almost 3 years earlier. She laughed, though her chest still hurt. A small green utility vehicle appeared beyond the lower pasture. It came up the slope beside the fence, driven by a woman in brown coveralls and a knitted cap, the color of mustard. Naomi stopped at the gate, climbed out, and looked at June's pickup. Then she looked at June. Naomi had the wide, weathered face of someone who spent more time under open sky than under flattering light. She did not hurry toward the porch. She latched the gate behind her first. I saw the truck, she said. I see that. I figured either you were here or somebody had stolen it and developed an interest in agriculture. June wiped her eyes with her fingers. It's me. Naomi nodded. She had sent a sympathy card after Walter died, a plain white one with no printed poem inside. She had written, "He was stubborn in useful ways." June had kept it. "Coffee?" Naomi asked. "I haven't found the coffee maker. I meant at my place." "Oh." Naomi studied her for one quiet second. "Or I could bring some here and pretend I didn't see you crying. That might be better." "Black?" "With milk." "I know how Walter drank his. I never knew how you did." The sentence struck June somewhere tender. Walter had known. Walter had known without asking for 40 years, though he had pretended each morning to forget whether she wanted one spoonful of sugar or two. "One sugar," June said. "A little milk?" Naomi started back toward the utility vehicle, then stopped. "Heat on?" "Technically." "Water?" "Technically." That's usually how this house does things. 20 minutes later, Naomi returned in an old Ford with 2 travel mugs, a gallon jug of clean water, and a red metal toolbox. She entered without waiting for June to perform the duties of a hostess, but she wiped her boots twice on the mat. The furnace was blowing lukewarm air through the floor vents. Naomi crouched beside the kitchen register and held her hand over it. "Walter said this thing was going to outlive us all," June said. "Walter also said duct tape was a building material. It isn't?" "Not in the amounts he used." They checked the utility closet. The furnace flame burned blue, steady enough for the moment. Naomi showed June the reset switch and the emergency shutoff, speaking without the slow, bright tone people had begun using with June after the funeral. The water in the kitchen sink had cleared to a faint yellow. Naomi filled a glass, held it toward the window, and sniffed it. "Hasn't run in a while," she said. "Let the cold taps go another 15 minutes. If it stays colored, call Dale Harkins." Numbers taped inside the cabinet under the sink. June opened the cabinet. The number was there in Walter's handwriting, on masking tape yellowed at the edges. Naomi glanced at the suitcase by the dining room. "You staying a few days?" "I don't know." "All right, my bed is in the garage." Naomi turned from the sink. June waited for a question. Naomi took a sip of coffee. "Here or in town?" "Town." "Did Walter put it there before he died?" "My children put it there yesterday." Naomi's face remained still, except for one slow blink. "With you in it?" "No." That was my first concern. Despite herself, June smiled. Naomi set down her mug. "You want to tell me why?" "No." "All right." They gave my bedroom to Kyle. I remember Kyle, tall, talks with both hands. "That's him." "He's selling insurance?" "Not anymore." Naomi waited, but June had already said more than she intended. She did not want to turn Kyle into a story told over fences. She did not want Naomi imagining Tessa as a villain carrying a mattress through the dark. They were not villains. They were her children. She knew which foods Kyle hated and how Tessa's forehead looked when a migraine was coming. June loved them in details too numerous to surrender, merely because they had failed her in one enormous detail. Naomi walked into the dining room and pressed a finger against a curled strip of wallpaper. It broke off. "This place needs some manners taught to it," she said. "That much I can see." Roof leaked over the downstairs bedroom last spring. Walter had somebody patch the shingles, but nobody fixed the ceiling. Don't sleep under the stain until Everett looks at it. Everett, my brother. I met him once. Probably didn't say much. He asked me to pass the salt. That sounds like a long conversation for him. Naomi opened the downstairs bedroom door. A dark water stain spread above the window, shaped like a continent nobody would visit voluntarily. The room held an iron bed frame without a mattress, a dresser with one missing pull, and 6 cardboard boxes Walter had never brought home. June stepped inside. On the dresser lay one of his work gloves, palm up. She picked it up. A thin line of dried mud crossed the thumb. Walter had big hands and surprisingly neat fingernails, except during tomato season. He must have removed the glove to open a box or answer his phone. Then he had walked away, expecting to come back. June put it down. Naomi had retreated to the hall. She was examining the door hinge with exaggerated concentration. "Do you know anybody who can fix the ceiling?" June asked. "Everett can tell you what needs doing. Whether he'll do it depends on his back and his mood, and those are competing medical conditions. I'll pay. He'll still complain." Walter complained while accepting money. Family resemblance. They went room by room, not inspecting so much as meeting the house in its current condition. 2 burners on the stove lit, one smoked. The refrigerator cooled after Naomi cleaned dust from the coils with an old paintbrush. A mouse had shredded something blue inside the linen cupboard. The upstairs bathroom faucet dripped, and one bedroom window would not close all the way. The front room, beneath its sheets, was almost unchanged from the last time June had seen it. Walter's parents had bought the sofa in 1986, a brown plaid object so determined to survive that removing it might require dismantling the house. June uncovered it and released a cloud of dust. Naomi coughed. "There's your guest room, only for guests I dislike. Those are the ones who stay longest." At 9, Naomi left to check the flock. She took June's travel mug, rinsed it, and placed it upside down beside the sink. "If you decide you want a real bed tonight, I've got a spare room," she said. "No speeches required. Thank you. I mean it, I know." Naomi gave her a look that suggested knowing and accepting were separate skills, then drove away. June stood in the middle of the kitchen, listening to the tap run. Her phone buzzed on the table. Tessa had sent a photograph of June's bedroom. Kyle's gray comforter was gone. The maple frame stood bare, and June's mattress had been brought back from the garage and leaned against it. "See? We're putting it back. Please come home." June enlarged the picture. Her lamp was missing. Walter's ceramic dish remained on the dresser, although June knew the actual dish was in the metal file box beside her cot. For a confused instant, she wondered what she was seeing. Then she realized Tessa had placed a similar white bowl where the dish had been. It was probably from the kitchen. The imitation unsettled June more than an empty space would have. Kyle sent a message of his own. "Need the truck by 2. Interview thing. Can you bring it back, or should Tess pick it up?" June stared at the screen. Not, "How is the farm?" Not, "Did the furnace start?" Not, "Are you all right?" She typed, "The truck is staying with me." 3 dots appeared immediately. "For how long?" "I don't know. I told you I need it." "You told me after I left. This is ridiculous." June put the phone face down. She found a yellow legal pad in Walter's farm folder and began a list. Drinking water, mouse traps, sheets. Food that did not require trusting the refrigerator. A shower curtain, light bulbs. Something to clean the stove without setting the house on fire. She added furnace inspection, then roof/ceiling, then well. The list grew until it covered most of the page. Beside each item, she tried to estimate a cost. Some numbers she knew, others she circled. By the bottom, the tooth under her temporary crown throbbed in time with her heartbeat. June had spent decades making money stretch. She knew the danger of solving the frightening problem before the necessary one. The farmhouse did not need to be pretty. It needed to be warm, dry, and unlikely to poison her. She changed into clean clothes, brushed the front of Walter's jacket, and drove into the nearest town. The hardware store shared a parking lot with a grocery, a pharmacy, and a diner called the Blue Hen. June bought traps, steel wool, cleaning supplies, batteries, a kettle, and a shower curtain, printed with cheerful yellow flowers. The total made her put back a new coffee maker. At the grocery, she bought soup, eggs, oatmeal, fruit, milk, and a small jar of instant coffee she knew would taste like regret. At the pharmacy counter, the clerk asked whether she had recently changed addresses. June opened her mouth. "No," she said, "not yet." Outside, she sat in the pickup with the receipt in her lap. Tessa called twice, Kyle once. June silenced the phone and ate one of the apples she had packed from home. When she returned, a covered casserole dish sat on the porch beside a folded note. "Chicken soup. Bring the dish back whenever. Or don't. I have too many." June carried it inside. She spent the afternoon cleaning one corner at a time. She stopped when her back hurt. She drank water. She swore at the shower curtain because the rings kept opening. At 4, she called the number beneath the sink and arranged for Dale Harkins to inspect the well the following morning. At 5, she called a heating company and learned the earliest appointment was 3 days away. Near sunset, the furnace shut off. June waited for it to start again. It did not. She pressed the reset switch once, as Naomi had shown her. The motor groaned. Warm air rose from the vent, carrying more dust. Technically, June said, she ate Naomi's soup at the kitchen table. It had thick noodles, celery cut into uneven moons, and far too much black pepper. Walter would have loved it. Her phone rang again. This time she answered. Kyle spoke before she could. "I missed the interview thing." "Was it an interview or an interview thing? Why are you acting like this?" I asked a question. I couldn't get there. Tessa has a car. She had appointments. There are taxis. From Mom's house, that would have cost almost $40. June looked at the first stars appearing through the kitchen window. I guess you'll plan differently next time, she said. A long silence followed. You really mean it, Kyle said. June did not ask what he meant. She knew. Yes, she said. After the call, she locked the farmhouse door. The deadbolt resisted, then slid into place with a heavy click. June stood with her hand on it, listening to the old house settle around her. Nobody else had a key. The feeling lasted until something moved behind the refrigerator. June turned. A small scratching traveled along the baseboard, paused beneath the cupboard, then continued toward the pantry. Nobody human, she amended. She set 2 traps with peanut butter, swept the kitchen again, and carried the casserole dish to the sink. The water was almost clear now. She washed the dish, dried it, and placed it near the door so she would remember to return it. At 9, she lay on the cot in her clothes. At 9:15, the furnace stopped. At 9:17, it started without assistance. At 10, the pipes knocked hard enough to make June sit up. At 10:20, wind pushed a branch against the dining room window in 3 slow scrapes. Walter had always slept through noises. June had been the one to investigate a cabinet settling or an ice maker dropping cubes, armed with a slipper while he snored behind her. But his sleeping presence had divided every danger in half. Without him, the farmhouse seemed full of intentions. She switched on the lamp beside the cot. Her phone was quiet. That bothered her too. June opened her messages. Tessa's last text had arrived 3 hours earlier. I don't understand what you want from us. June began typing, erased it, typed again. I want to sleep in my own bedroom. She sent it before she could improve it. Tessa replied almost immediately. It's back the way it was. June stared at the words. The room might be back. The decision was not. She placed the phone face down and turned off the lamp. Sometime after midnight, a trap snapped in the kitchen. June pulled the quilt over her head and told herself the matter could wait until morning. She stayed awake another hour, listening for tiny footsteps of revenge. The mouse was dead when she found it. June had not expected to feel sorry for it. It lay beside the pantry with one pink foot curled inward, looking less like an invader than something that had trusted the wrong meal. Walter had always handled traps. He took them to the far edge of the yard and returned empty-handed, never discussing the procedure. June put on rubber gloves, carried the trap outside, inside a grocery bag, and stood beside the porch uncertain what constituted the far edge of 42 acres. She walked to the trash barrel near the machine shed. Sorry, she said, and dropped it in. The sky was brightening over the pasture. Frost silvered the weeds, and smoke rose again from Naomi's chimney. June's breath hung in front of her. She had slept poorly, her tooth hurt, and the right side of her back had developed a grievance against the cot. Still, the morning belonged to her. She heated water in the new kettle and made instant coffee in Walter's mug. It tasted exactly as expected. She took it onto the porch and drank every drop. Dale Harkins arrived at 8:12 in a white van with Harkins Well Pump painted on the side in blue letters. He was a narrow man in his 60s with a silver mustache and a way of listening to pipes as if they might confess. You Walter's wife? He asked. June, met you once. At the pasture gate. You had a pie. You remember the pie? I remember Walter dropped it. He tilted the box. He said the wind did it. There wasn't any wind. Dale smiled and went to work. He ran taps, tested pressure, opened the pump housing, and disappeared into the crawl space beneath the back of the house. June followed until the opening. When she bent to peer inside, he shone his flashlight toward her face. No reason for both of us to get spiders in our hair. I'd like to know what you're doing. Checking whether your husband's repairs are repairs or suggestions. That could take all day. It took an hour and a half. The pump worked. The pressure tank was old but holding. Dale believed the yellow water came from iron and sitting pipes, not contamination. But he filled 2 sample bottles for testing. Don't drink it until the results come back, he said. Bathing's fine, unless you object to smelling like a penny. How much to replace everything that might need replacing? Everything in this county might need replacing. Doesn't mean you start ripping it out. He wrote the service charge on a carbon form. It was lower than June had feared and higher than she wished. Walter said you two were going to move out here, Dale said as she wrote the check. He said many things. He usually said that one twice. June handed him the check. Dale tucked it into his shirt pocket. apparently deciding he had stepped far enough into the subject. I'll call with the water results. After he left, June added the amount to her legal pad. She drew a line beneath it and calculated what remained in the checking account after the month's townhouse bills. The farm's electricity was low. Property taxes had already been paid for the year. Insurance would come due in January. Naomi's pasture payment covered some expenses, but not enough to make the house free. Free was a word people used when someone else was paying the cost. At 10, a truck pulled into the lane carrying a stack of lumber and 2 people in the cab. Naomi climbed out on the passenger side. The driver took longer. Everett Bell unfolded himself from behind the wheel with the deliberate care of a man whose back had opinions. He was taller than Naomi and thinner, with the same wide-set eyes. His beard was iron gray and trimmed close. He looked at the porch before he looked at June. "That board's worse," he said. "Good morning." "Morning." Naomi handed June the empty travel mug. "I told him about the ceiling." "And the porch," Everett said. "I didn't tell him about the porch. The porch told him." Everett stepped onto the first board, shifted his weight, and frowned. "You been using this?" "It's attached to the front door. Use the back." "The back steps lean." "Use neither." "Should I come through a window?" He considered the house. Kitchen windows painted shut. Naomi rolled her eyes. This is him being friendly. Inside, Everett stood beneath the downstairs bedroom stain and tilted his head. He did not touch it. He walked upstairs, looked out a window at the roof pitch, then went outside again. June and Naomi followed him around the house while he studied flashing, gutters, and the patch Walter had arranged the previous spring. "Patch held," he said. "Ceiling's old damage. Needs cutting out, insulation checked, new drywall, window trim too." "Can you do it?" June asked. Everett rubbed the heel of his hand against his lower back. "Can?" Naomi waited. June waited. Everett looked annoyed by both of them. Didn't say when. What would it cost? He named a figure. June had expected worse. And the porch? He named another figure. She had not expected worse enough. "What if we replace only the dangerous boards? Then you'll have safe boards nailed to unsafe boards." "That sounds like politics," Naomi said. Everett ignored her. He crouched near the porch footing, picked at a soft place in the wood, and stood with a wince. "Walter and I talked about rebuilding the front 6 years ago. He never told me. He didn't have the money. He could have told me that too." Everett glanced at her, then away. He figured he'd do it himself. June almost said, "Of course he did." The words caught behind a sudden image of Walter kneeling in the grass with a measuring tape, making plans against time. How many small failures had he hidden because he meant to repair them before she saw? Naomi touched the porch post. "The farm account can cover materials if I pay the winter pasture early." "No," June said. "It's due next month. Then pay it next month." "Does timing matter?" "It matters to me." Naomi studied her without offense. "All right." Everett took a carpenter's pencil from his shirt pocket. On the back of Dale's carbon form, he sketched a temporary brace and listed the lumber needed to make the porch safe until spring. "This buys you months," he said, "not years." "What would you charge?" "For that?" "Dinner? What kind?" "Food?" "He means pot roast," Naomi said. "I didn't say pot roast." "You think pot roast." "I think many things I don't say." "That explains the quiet." June looked at the rough sketch. "I can make pot roast." Everett folded the paper and handed it to her. Saturday. It was the first arrangement June had made for the farm that extended beyond the week. The thought produced a small jolt in her stomach. Saturday, she agreed. Naomi and Everett left shortly before noon, arguing mildly about whether the lumber in his truck was properly covered. June watched them until they passed the gate. Her phone rang from inside. Tessa. June let it ring twice before answering. "I'm at work," Tessa said, which was how she announced that the call should not become emotional. "I only have a minute. All right. Did you sleep?" "Some." "Did the heat stay on?" "Mostly." "Mostly isn't an answer. It is the only answer I have." Tessa sighed. "Kyle took a rideshare to get his things from Denise's." "Good." "It cost him $63. Then he traveled farther than the interview." "Mom, can we not?" June sat at the kitchen table. "You called me." "I called because I've been thinking. Maybe we made the change too quickly." "You think?" I said maybe. There was a pause filled with office sounds, distant phones, a printer, somebody laughing. Tessa continued more quietly. You should have told us you were that unhappy. June looked toward the suitcase beside the cot. I didn't know I needed to announce it. You always say you're fine. Usually I am. Even after Dad, every time I asked, you said you were fine. What should I have said? The truth. June leaned back. Would it have changed where you put my bed? Tessa did not answer. Outside, a sheep called once, low and irritated. I want to come out, Tessa said. Not today. Why not? Because I don't want you here today. The sharp intake of breath told June how rarely she had said such a thing. I'm your daughter. I know who you are. I'm trying to help. I know that too. Then why are you punishing me? June closed her eyes. Tessa's voice had thinned, and beneath the control was something frightened. June could have soothed it. The familiar words waited ready. I'm not angry. Don't worry. We'll work it out. She pressed her thumb against the edge of the legal pad. I am trying to find out what I want, she said. I can't do that while you're telling me. Tessa was silent for so long, June checked the screen to see whether the call had ended. Finally, she said, When can I come? I'll tell you. That's not fair. It's what I can give you. Afterward, June remained at the table until her coffee went cold. Then she carried the cot into the front room, stripped the dusty cover from the plaid sofa, and dragged one end of it 6 inches away from the wall before admitting it was too heavy. She laughed at herself, breathless and alone. The house did not need conquering before supper. She opened the curtains instead. Sunlight entered the room in broad, dusty columns, touching the worn floorboards, the sheeted chairs, and the faint outline on the wall where a family photograph had once hung. June stood in the middle of it all, letting the light show her exactly how much work remained. Dust looked almost beautiful when the sun caught it. Everything else looked worse. June pulled the sheets from the chairs and carried them outside, where she shook them over the yard. A cloud rose around her. She sneezed 7 times in a row, the last one loud enough to startle sheep at the fence. That's right, she called. Run for your lives. She opened every window that would cooperate. The front room smelled less like a closed trunk by noon. She wiped down the mantel, found a single dead beetle inside a glass lampshade, and discovered that Walter's mother had protected the arms of the plaid sofa beneath fitted plastic sleeves. The plastic had yellowed to the color of old teeth. June tugged one sleeve free, lost her balance, and sat hard on the floor. For several seconds, she remained there. Nothing seemed broken. Her dignity had been damaged, but it was becoming difficult to locate. She got up using the sofa arm and added rubber-backed work gloves to her shopping list. The heating technician arrived the next afternoon. He vacuumed the furnace, replaced a belt, and told June the machine might last the winter or might fail before he reached the highway. Those are very different possibilities, she said. They're the 2 I've got. What would you do? If it were mine? Yes, I'd start saving. June paid him and added a new line to the legal pad. Furnace replacement, eventually. She underlined eventually twice, as if the word could restrain machinery. Dale called before supper. The water sample contained iron and minerals, but nothing dangerous. June could drink it. She filled a glass from the kitchen tap and held it to the window. Clear enough? It tasted faintly metallic, but it was cold and belonged to the farm. That evening, she took her first proper shower. The yellow-flowered curtain billowed inward and wrapped itself around her left leg. The water pressure surged whenever the pump engaged. Halfway through washing her hair, the temperature dropped so suddenly that June shouted Walter's name. She stood under the cold spray, soap in her eyes, hearing his absence. Then the water warmed again. June finished the shower. She cried only while drying her hair, and not for long. Her days found a shape. She ate oatmeal in the kitchen, made one necessary phone call, cleaned until her back objected, and stopped before pride could turn an ache into an injury. She slept on the cot because the stained bedroom ceiling still made Naomi suspicious, though June doubted it intended to fall. Each morning she folded the quilt and laid it on the plaid sofa. Each night she unfolded it again. The house slowly revealed what it had saved. There were canning jars beneath the pantry stairs, a complete set of stoneware dishes in a box marked church, and enough mismatched silverware to host a banquet for people who did not mind stabbing food with 3 different eras. Walter's 6 boxes contained no treasure. They held faucet parts, old tax receipts, an electric drill with no battery, 2 porch lights still in their packaging, and a quantity of screws sorted into baby food jars his father must have labeled decades earlier. Flat, round, maybe brass. June held up the last jar. Useful system, she told the empty room. Walter had written porch on one box and kitchen on another. He had made intentions into categories, which was not the same as completing them. Still, June set one of the porch lights on the dining table. It was plain black metal, sturdy and unremarkable. She could imagine it beside the front door. Kyle's messages became more practical as the days passed. Where does Dad keep the extra furnace filters? Do you know the Wi-Fi password? Is the electric on autopay? June answered the first two. To the third, she wrote, "It was. Remove my account and put the bill in your name for this month." He called immediately. "You can't just shut things off." "I didn't. They said I need a deposit, then pay it. It's almost $200. You'll get it back when the account closes." "Which is when?" "I said 30 days. You said we'd discuss it after 30 days. "We will." "What am I supposed to do until then?" June looked at the clean kitchen counter. "Live in a 3-bedroom house." "That is not an answer. It was the answer when you moved me to the garage." Kyle hung up. She waited for guilt to arrive. It came, but it found other things already occupying the room. On Friday, Tessa sent a message asking whether Sunday would be a good day to visit. June replied that she was not ready. Tessa sent a thumbs-up symbol, a response so unlike her that June suspected it required physical pain. The following morning, Everett arrived at 7:30 with lumber, a circular saw, and a canvas brace around his waist. "You're early," June said. "You're awake. I could have been enjoying leisure." He looked at her rubber gloves and the broom in her hand, clearly. Naomi came through the gate carrying a sack of onions and 2 loaves of bread. "I told him civilized people wait until 8. Civilized people don't have a porch trying to kill them." June had put the pot roast in the oven before dawn. The farmhouse was warm with the smell of beef, garlic, and rosemary. Everett stood in the kitchen breathing through his nose. "You think in many things you don't say?" Naomi asked. "Some." "Do any involve pot roast?" "Most." They worked without allowing June to pretend she was not part of the work. Everett removed the worst boards and showed her where the support beneath them had softened. Naomi held the tape measure. June sorted usable screws from Walter's jars and made coffee strong enough that nobody complained. Everett's idea of conversation consisted mostly of naming tools before he needed them. Square. Naomi handed him the square. Pencil. June handed him the pencil. Coffee. "That's not a tool," Naomi said. "It is at this age." Around 10, Everett straightened too quickly and went pale. June saw it before Naomi did. "Sit down," she said. "I'm fine." "Of course. Sit down while being fine." He braced one hand against the porch post. Naomi moved closer, but Everett gave her a look that stopped her. Sibling history passed between them without explanation. June carried a chair outside and placed it behind his knees. "If you fall on my new boards, I'll charge you for damage." He sat. She brought water and one of the apples from the kitchen. Everett accepted both without gratitude or resistance. After several minutes, color returned to his face. "My back locks up," he said, as if confessing to poor weather. I gathered. "Doesn't mean I can't work." "No, it means you can't work standing up for the next 10 minutes. Naomi turned away, hiding a smile. They finished the temporary repair shortly after noon. New boards interrupted the gray porch in pale stripes, and the brace beneath the worst section was visible from the yard, but nothing shifted under June's feet. Everett walked across it twice. "Months," he said, "not years." "I remember." "You'll forget when it stops scaring you." "Then you can remind me." He nodded once. June set the dining room table with the stoneware dishes. Naomi brought the casserole dish back into service for roasted onions. Everett carved the meat, despite claiming he was not particular about his slices. They had just sat down when tires sounded on the gravel lane. June's fork stopped halfway to her napkin. Naomi glanced toward the front window. "Expecting somebody?" "No." A silver sedan came into view, moving too fast over the ruts. It stopped beside Everett's truck. Tessa got out first. Kyle emerged from the passenger side carrying a cardboard tray of coffees and wearing the expression of a man who had been inconvenienced by the road. June remained seated. Everett looked at Naomi. Naomi looked at June. "Those would be the bed movers," June said. Naomi choked on her water. Tessa climbed the porch and knocked before opening the door. "Mom, we're in the dining room." She appeared in the doorway in a neat rust-colored sweater and ankle boots already marked with mud. Kyle stood behind her, holding the coffees as if they proved peaceful intentions. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. The table was set for 3. Steam rose from the roast. Walter's old stoneware bowl sat between Naomi and Everett. June's hair was tied back with a red bandana, and sawdust clung to one sleeve of her cardigan. Tessa's eyes moved over everything. "We brought coffee," Kyle said. Everett looked at the mug beside his plate. "We have some." Kyle stared at him. June stood. Tessa. Kyle. "This is Naomi Bell and her brother, Everett." "We've met Naomi," Tessa said, though June did not think they had. Naomi did not correct her. "Hello?" Everett lifted 2 fingers from the table. Tessa stepped toward June. "We tried calling. My phone is in the kitchen. You said you weren't ready for a visit." "Yes. So we thought if we waited until you were ready, you might keep saying no. That is what no allows me to do." Kyle set the coffee tray on the sideboard too hard. Liquid jumped through one lid. "We drove an hour and a half." "I didn't ask you to." "We were worried," Tessa said. June could see the fatigue beneath her daughter's makeup. Tessa had chewed the lipstick from the inside of her lower lip, a habit she denied having. Kyle looked tired, too. His collar was wrinkled, and there was a fresh nick on his chin. For one dangerous moment, June wanted to feed them. Tessa glanced at the table again. "Are we interrupting?" "Yes," June said. The word landed more heavily than she expected. Naomi pushed back her chair. "We can finish another time." "No," June said. "You did the work. You stay for dinner." "We're not here to take your food," Kyle said. "Nobody said you were. We came to bring you home." Everett placed his knife beside his plate with quiet precision. Tessa looked at him, then back at June. "Can we talk privately?" June hesitated. She did not want Naomi and Everett witnessing a family argument. She also did not want her children moving her into a room alone and deciding the shape of the conversation. "We can talk in the front room," she said. "The walls are still attached." Kyle muttered something. "What was that?" June asked. "Nothing." The plaid sofa had shed its plastic sleeves, but dust still lived deep in the cushions. Tessa sat carefully at one end. Kyle remained standing. His gaze fell on the cot, folded against the wall. "You're sleeping on that?" "For now." "Jesus, Mom." Tessa touched the worn upholstery. "This place isn't ready." "I know. The porch is torn apart. The road is terrible. There's no cell service half the time. I have service. What if you fall? What if you do?" "That's different." "Why?" "Because I'm not 70. June looked at her daughter. Tessa closed her eyes briefly. "That came out wrong." Kyle paced to the window. "Everything comes out wrong with her now." June felt the sentence strike, then settle. "You missed a spot," Kyle added, pointing toward the cobweb in the corner. "If you're trying to prove you can live like this, fine. We're impressed. But you've made your point. My point, yes, we shouldn't have moved the bed. We said that." Tessa fixed the room. "I'm back on the sofa. What else do you want?" Behind the dining room wall, a chair creaked. Naomi and Everett were trying not to listen, which made the small house feel even smaller. June folded her hands to stop them trembling. "I want you to leave," she said. Kyle laughed once without humor. "Come on, I was having dinner with strangers. They asked before they came." Tessa stood. "Mom, stop. This isn't you." June looked from her daughter to her son, both waiting for the familiar woman to return and make the room comfortable for them. "No," she said. "It may not be." Kyle stared at her as though she had spoken in a voice he did not recognize. Tessa recovered first. "Then, who is it?" "I don't know yet. That's convenient." "It isn't convenient at all." June's knees had begun to ache from standing, but she refused to sit while Kyle towered over the front room and Tessa occupied the sofa like a mediator, called to somebody else's dispute. Kyle folded his arms. "Let's stop pretending this is about a bed. All right?" His mouth opened, then closed. He had expected resistance to that suggestion, not agreement. "What is it about?" he asked. "You needed a place to stay. I gave you one. Then you decided you needed my place inside it too. I moved the bed back. You keep saying that as if the work was carrying furniture." "What work?" June almost laughed. "Exactly." Tessa stood beside the sofa. "We made a bad decision. You made it together. Yes, we did. But you're acting like we threw you into the street. No, you kept me very neatly inside the property line. Tessa flinched. Kyle walked to the mantel where June had lined up the few things she cleaned. An oil lamp, a chipped green vase, and Walter's old wooden weather station. He picked up the weather station and rubbed dust from its brass plate. Dad loved this thing, he said. Put it down. He did, but not before giving her a wounded look. I'm allowed to miss him too. I know that. Do you? Because you took his truck. You came out here to his farm. You brought his mug. You're turning him into something that belongs only to you. The accusation landed because there was some truth inside it. June had packed the mug without thinking of Kyle or Tessa. She had taken the ceramic key dish because Kyle's coins offended her. She had wrapped Walter's flannel shirt around the folder in the file box, as if his children might mishandle the fabric. Grief made thieves of all of them. He was my husband, she said. He was our father. Yes. Kyle's eyes reddened. He looked toward the window. Then why did you leave us a note like we're tenants? Because when I spoke, neither of you listened. I listened. You waited for your turn. Tessa stepped between them without quite placing herself there. Everybody is upset. We can fix the bedroom and start over. There is no starting over, June said. There is only what happens next. All right, Tessa said. What happens next? The question opened a space June had been avoiding. She heard Everett shift in the dining room. A serving spoon touched a dish. Outside, wind moved through the dry grass with a sound like whispered argument. Kyle needed an answer about the house. Tessa needed a schedule. June wanted another week before deciding anything. She wanted Walter to come through the back door, take one look at the cot, and tell her whether she was brave or ridiculous. Instead, she had the furnace estimate on the legal pad and a repaired porch that would last months, not years. She had 2 houses requiring heat, insurance, taxes, and attention. One contained a son waiting to be rescued. The other contained work that frightened her and mornings that did not. I'm going to sell the house in town, she said. Nobody moved. The sentence surprised June too. Once spoken, it did not feel impulsive. It felt like a door she had been standing beside in the dark. Kyle's face emptied. What? I don't need both houses. You can't decide that because of one fight. I didn't decide it because of one fight. You just got here. I know. Tessa looked less angry than alarmed. Have you talked to anyone? A realtor? The bank? No. Then you haven't decided. You're threatening us. I'm not threatening anybody. You know Kyle has nowhere else. Kyle turned on her. I don't need you to say it like that. I'm trying to help you. You always say that right before making me sound homeless. You are living in Mom's house. I was invited. June raised one hand. They stopped, mostly from surprise. Kyle, you have until the end of the month. His face went red. That's 3 weeks. It is 22 days. You counted? I looked at a calendar. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know. Can I come here? The speed of the question told June he had already considered it. No. Why not? This place has, 4 bedrooms? 3? And no. I could help fix it. You could have helped fix the bathroom leak in town. I didn't know about it. I told you twice. Then tell me again. June closed her eyes briefly. This is why. What is why? You believe anything you missed becomes my responsibility to repeat. Kyle stared at her. Tessa said, maybe we should all take a breath. No, Kyle snapped. She wants me out? Fine. But don't act like this is some grand lesson. She's angry, so she's pulling the floor out from under me. June's voice came quieter than she expected. You put my bed in a garage. I said I was sorry. No, you said Tessa fixed it. He looked toward his sister. Tessa's expression hardened. Don't put this all on me. You wanted the room. You came up with the garage. You said she'd be fine with it. And you believe me? I wanted to. That stopped them. Tessa pressed her lips together. For the first time since entering the farmhouse, she looked ashamed rather than defensive. It did not last. Shame seemed to anger her. She grabbed her purse from the sofa. We shouldn't do this in front of people, Naomi's voice carried from the dining room. We can hear less than you think and more than you'd like. Everett murmured something too low to make out. Kyle shook his head. Unbelievable. June opened the front door. Cold air entered around her. You're throwing us out now? Tessa asked. I asked you to leave before we started. You won't even let us finish talking. We are not finishing anything today. Kyle brushed past June onto the porch. One of the coffee cups remained in the cardboard tray on the sideboard, untouched. Tessa picked it up, hesitated, and set it down again. At the door, she turned. What if something happens to you out here? Something already happened to me at home. Tessa's face tightened. June regretted the sentence as soon as she said it. It sounded larger than a bed, crueler than she meant. Walter had died in that house. Tessa had found June sitting on the laundry room floor beside the damp towels after the ambulance left. She had stayed all night, making tea nobody drank, but Tessa gave her no time to correct it. Fine, she said. Call Naomi. She walked down the steps. Everett's new boards held firm beneath both children. June closed the door before the car had turned around. She stood with her hand on the knob until tires crunched down the lane and faded. In the dining room, the pot roast waited beneath a cooling sheen of gravy. Naomi had moved June's plate to the oven. Everett sat with his hands folded, looking at the table as if it contained plans requiring study. I'm sorry, June said. For what? Naomi asked. Dragging you into that. We stayed in our chairs. You heard everything. Everett picked up his fork. Walls are thin. Naomi looked at him. That is the opposite of reassuring. I'm not asking either of you to take sides. Good, Naomi said. Families don't have sides. They have weather. Everett cut a piece of roast. This is dry. Naomi stared at him. June stared at him. He chewed thoughtfully. Gravy fixes it. June sat down and began to laugh. The laughter came out too loud and lasted too long. She covered her mouth, but that made it worse. Naomi's stern expression cracked. Everett looked from one woman to the other, apparently uncertain why honesty had caused trouble. By the time they stopped, June's eyes were wet again. Everett passed her the gravy. They ate without discussing Kyle or Tessa. Naomi talked about a ram that had learned to open a feed room latch. Everett argued that the latch had never closed correctly. June told them about Walter dropping Dale Harkins's pie, and Naomi claimed she had always suspected the story involved more than wind. The food was lukewarm. It was also the first meal June had eaten at a table with other people since leaving town. Afterward, Naomi washed dishes despite June's objections. Everett found the boxed porch light and carried it outside. You don't have to install that today, June said. I'm not. He examined the old fixture beside the door. Wire's bad. Needs replacing. So, it goes on the list. He nodded approvingly, as if June had passed a test he had not announced. When they left, Naomi hugged her. It was brief and practical, more pressure than performance. You can call, Naomi said. I know. Knowing and doing, I heard you the first time. Good. Everett paused on the porch. 22 days is short. June felt herself stiffen. He added, long if you're the one waiting. Then he followed his sister to the truck. The farmhouse seemed larger after everyone left. June carried the remaining coffee from the sideboard to the sink. It was cold, pale with too much cream. Kyle took his coffee nearly black. Tessa must have bought this one for June. She poured it out. Her phone held 4 new messages. The first was from Kyle. You had no right to embarrass me in front of strangers. The second came from Tessa. I hope you understand what you're doing. The third was Kyle again. Dad would never sell that house out from under me. June read the last message twice. Tessa's final message arrived while she was still holding the phone. Please don't list anything until we talk. June sat at the kitchen table with the legal pad. At the top of a clean page, she wrote, Call Realtor. Her hand remained on the pen. She could hear Walter objecting to the speed, then contradicting himself and praising the efficiency. She could hear Kyle calling it punishment and Tessa calling it unsafe. June drew no line beneath the words. She was not ready to make a call simply because she had announced one. Instead, she added 3 smaller items below it. Find town utility bills, price porch materials, buy a mattress. That night, the cot sagged beneath her as usual. The room cooled after midnight. A branch scraped the window and something moved in the wall. June lay awake thinking of the townhouse empty. For 46 years, nearly every future she imagined had contained Walter, Kyle, or Tessa. Even her private wishes had been furnished for company. Now, an empty house frightened her less than an occupied one. She turned toward the window. Across the dark pasture, Naomi's porch light burned like a small, steady answer. By breakfast, the light was gone, and the kitchen window showed only pale pasture and her own faint reflection. June called the realtor at 9. Marlene Dunn had sold 2 houses on June Street and once cornered Walter at a neighborhood picnic to tell him their kitchen counters were approaching vintage. Walter replied that he was approaching vintage himself and had no intention of replacing either. Marlene remembered him. "Oh, June," she said, her voice softening. "I was so sorry." "Thank you. How are you holding up?" June looked at the cot. "Differently every day. That sounds about right." She explained that she might sell the townhouse. Marlene asked the usual questions: roof age, heating system, number of bathrooms, then asked the one June had dreaded. "Are you living there now?" "My son is." "Will he remain during the sale?" "No." The answer came easily enough to frighten her. They scheduled a walkthrough for Wednesday morning. Marlene said she would not bring forms or take photographs. They would simply look, discuss timing, and identify what needed attention. June appreciated the distinction. Looking was not listing. Talking was not signing. A door could be opened without walking through it. She texted Kyle. "A realtor is coming, Wednesday at 10 to look at the house. This is not a showing. Please be there or make sure the door is open." He called before she had set down the phone. "You actually did it. I made an appointment. You said we'd talk first. We talk Saturday. You announce things. That isn't talking. What would you like to say?" "That you're making a mistake." "All right." "That's it? I heard you. You don't care." June carried her oatmeal to the table. "Caring does not require me to agree. Did Naomi teach you that?" The remark was petty enough to reveal its target. Kyle was not angry at Naomi. He was angry that someone existed who did not need him to approve June's choices. "No," June said. "Life did." He hung up again. Kyle had always ended difficult conversations first. Even as a young man, he preferred leaving to losing. June used to call after him until he answered, then apologize for whatever portion of the argument might bring him home. This time, she finished her oatmeal. Everett came by that afternoon to measure the stained ceiling. He brought no lumber and accepted no coffee. He moved the cot into the front room, covered the iron bed frame with a drop cloth, and cut a small square from the damaged plasterboard. Dry insulation fell onto his shoulders. "Well?" June asked. "Dry? That's good? Better than wet." He enlarged the opening, checked the framing, and found no rot. Walter's roof patch had held. The damage was ugly but contained. "How soon can you finish it?" June asked. Everett looked through the open ceiling. "Friday. And what will it cost?" He named the same figure as before. "No surprises? Life has surprises. Drywall doesn't have many." June wrote him a check for half the amount. He looked at it. "What? You trust me? I know where your sister's sheep live." He folded the check into his wallet. "Fair." Before leaving, he examined the upstairs window that would not close. He pushed it once, removed a swollen piece of wood with 3 strokes of a pocket knife, and pushed again. The sash dropped into place. "How much for that?" "Nothing. I don't like nothing." "Then put it with the pot roast." That was for the porch. That roast covered things. Wednesday morning arrived cold and clear. June dressed in the navy cardigan, brushed farm dust from her shoes, and drove into town with the metal file box on the passenger floor. She had forgotten how familiar the route looked from the other direction. The feed store, the creek, the place where the radio returned all at once in the middle of a commercial. With every mile, the farm loosened behind her, and the old life tightened ahead. Her neighborhood appeared almost offensively unchanged. Someone had placed pumpkins along a front walk. A garbage truck blocked one lane. The maple tree near June's mailbox had dropped half its leaves across the yard, and Walter's rake remained propped against the garage where Kyle had left it after promising to finish. June parked behind Tessa's silver sedan. She had not expected Tessa. The front door opened before June reached it. Tessa wore black trousers and a cream blouse, clothes meant for work. "I moved my morning appointments," she said. "You didn't need to. I wanted to be here." Kyle called from the kitchen. "Door sticks now." June entered. The house smelled stale, faintly sour beneath the plug-in air freshener Tessa had placed near the hall. 3 pizza boxes sat on the kitchen counter. A dark ring marked the table where a wet glass had stood. The peace lily beside the window drooped so low, its leaves touched the floor. June carried it to the sink. "I thought I asked you to feed the plants," she said. Kyle appeared holding a travel cup. "I did. When? Sunday. It needs water more than once a week. It never did before. Yes, it did. I watered it. She gave the plant a slow drink. Water ran immediately through the dry soil and into the sink. Tessa began stacking the pizza boxes. We've all been distracted. Leave them, June said. Why? I didn't put them there. Kyle made an exasperated noise. Is everything a lesson now? No, some things are garbage. The bathroom leak had spread. Water darkened the baseboard outside the half bath, and the vinyl floor gave slightly beneath June's shoe. I put a towel down, Kyle said. The towel was soaked. Did you call the plumber? What plumber? The number is on the side of the refrigerator. I thought you handled that kind of thing. June looked at him. He heard himself too late. I mean, you know the house, he added. So will the next owner. The doorbell rang. Marlene Dunn entered carrying a leather folder she promised not to open unless June asked. She was in her late 50s, brisk without being cheerful, with silver blonde hair and red eyeglasses. She greeted Tessa and Kyle, then directed her attention back to June. You lead, she said. That small courtesy nearly undid her. They began in the kitchen. Marlene asked when the refrigerator had been replaced, opened cabinets, and wrote notes. She pressed one finger against the water-damaged bathroom trim and recommended repairing the leak before any listing. Kyle followed them from room to room. Tessa offered explanations nobody requested. The living room usually looks much better. Mom has been staying at the other property. Kyle is between places. Each sentence arranged June's life into a shape Tessa could tolerate. In the primary bedroom, the maple bed frame stood without slats. June's mattress remained upright against the wall. Her lamp was on the floor, shade bent. Walter's dresser held the white kitchen bowl Tessa had placed there for the photograph. Marlene glanced at June, then looked away. This room gets good afternoon light, she said. Yes, June answered. Kyle stood at the door. It's not normally like this. June touched the mattress. The lower edge felt cool. A faint gray line marked where it had rested on the garage floor. Why didn't you put the bed together? She asked. I moved back to the sofa like you wanted. That wasn't the question. I've been trying to find somewhere to live, Tessa said. Kyle. What? She wants everything done at once. Marlene closed her notebook. I can wait downstairs. No, June said. We're finished up here. The tour continued. The guest room held Walter's clothes, exactly as before. The garage contained June's chair, the braided rug, and the garment rack, now empty. Bless this mess leaned against the freezer. Marlene's eyes paused on it. Tessa picked it up. This doesn't belong here. June almost asked where it did belong. At the kitchen table, Marlene gave her opinion. The house was solid. It needed the bathroom repair, paint in 2 rooms, a deep cleaning, and less furniture. The market was steady. If June wished to list after Kyle moved, Marlene could arrange photographs and showings within a week. She named a likely price range. It was neither a miracle nor an insult. After fees, repairs, and moving costs, the proceeds could secure June's retirement and make the farm safe. They could not support 3 households, nor should they. Thank you, June said. I'll call you. Marlene handed her a card and left without opening the leather folder. Kyle watched the door close. How much of that were you planning to give us? Tessa turned sharply. Kyle. What? We're all thinking it? June had not been. She placed Marlene's card in her purse. None. Kyle laughed as if she had confirmed something ugly. So, this is revenge. This is my house. It was Dad's too. And if he were here, we would decide together. But he isn't. The words cracked through the kitchen. Kyle's face changed. I didn't mean, I know. Tessa sat down. She looked suddenly exhausted. Nobody is asking you to split the money tomorrow. He just did. I asked a question, Kyle said. June picked up the metal file box. You have until the date I gave you. The plumber is called Benton. His number is on the refrigerator. You will arrange the repair and let me know the estimate before authorizing it. Kyle stared at her. You're making me handle it? You live here. I won't after 3 weeks. Then consider it practice. She went to the bedroom and packed Walter's flannel shirts, her remaining clothes, and the framed photograph from their 35th anniversary. She took her reading lamp from the garage, bent shade and all. Tessa followed her to the truck. Mom. June opened the passenger door. I didn't know he was going to ask about the money. He didn't know either. That's why it was honest. Tessa hugged her arms against the cold. Are you really going to do this? June looked back at the house. Through the kitchen window, Kyle stood beside the thirsty peace lily, pouring water into its pot. Yes, she said. The word hurt. It also held. June drove away before Tessa could ask another question. At the first red light, she gripped the steering wheel and stared straight ahead. A florist's van waited beside her, its side painted with enormous pink roses. For one unreasonable second, she wanted Walter to appear in the passenger seat and tell her she had gone too far. He would not have. That was the problem with arguing beside the dead. They eventually agreed with whoever imagined them. June pulled into a mattress store outside town. A salesman with a tie patterned in tiny sailboats guided her toward a row of beds with names such as Heavenly Rest and Imperial Cloud. June lay down on 3 of them, while he stood near her feet explaining coils, cooling layers, and lumbar zones. How long should a mattress last? She asked. 8 to 10 years. I'm 70. He did not know where to look. I'm not asking for a guarantee, June said. She chose a firm, ordinary mattress that did not promise transformation. Delivery to the farm cost extra. She paid it. 2 men with a truck were cheaper than proving she could lift a mattress. The purchase left her feeling hopeful until she saw the total on the receipt. She sat in the pickup and added it to the farm expenses. Well service, furnace inspection, drywall, mattress. The page had begun to look less like a list and more like an argument. When June reached the farm, the house was silent. She knew before opening the door. The furnace should have produced a low vibration through the kitchen floor. Instead, the rooms held the still, waiting cold of a building without heat. The thermostat read 54. June set down the file box and tried the reset switch once. The motor clicked, groaned, and stopped. She did not press it again. The heating technician had written emergency service on the bottom of his invoice, followed by a number and, in smaller handwriting, don't keep resetting. June called. The technician on duty could come the following morning unless she smelled gas or the temperature fell below 40 inside. He suggested space heaters, open cupboard doors beneath sinks, and somewhere else to sleep. I have a space heater, June said. She found it in its unopened box beside the garage bed in her memory. Then she remembered it was still in town. The only electric heater at the farm was a small ceramic one in the upstairs bathroom. June plugged it into the dining room. It glowed orange and warmed a circle roughly the size of a dinner plate. Outside, the light was fading. The weather report predicted 26 degrees. June put on Walter's jacket and heated soup on the stove. She could sleep in her clothes beneath 2 quilts. People had survived worse. The pipes could be protected. She had bottled water. If the house became too cold, she could sit in the pickup with the engine running. All of those facts were true. They were also stupid. June carried Naomi's casserole dish to the truck and drove across the lower lane. Naomi's house was a white, low-roofed place sheltered by 3 enormous sycamores. Muddy boots lined the back porch. A brass bell hung beside the door, but June knocked instead. Naomi opened it wearing flannel pants and an apron printed with red roosters. My furnace stopped, June said. All right. The repairman is coming tomorrow. Good. You said you had a spare room. Naomi stepped aside. I do. No congratulations. No fuss over June making the sensible choice. Naomi took the casserole dish and called it a hostage returned safely. Then she showed June a room at the end of the hall with a brass bed, a crocheted blanket, and wallpaper covered in small blue flowers. My aunt chose the wallpaper, Naomi said. She was losing her eyesight and apparently wanted everyone else to join her. It's cheerful. It's violent. June placed her overnight bag on the bed. She had driven back to the farm for it, opened cupboard doors, shut off nothing, and worried the entire way that Naomi might change her mind. From the bedroom window, she could see the Mercer farmhouse across the dark pasture. No light showed except the faint orange glow of the little heater in the dining room. I can pay you, June said. Naomi looked offended. Then I'll charge you enough to be insulting. I don't want to impose. You're one woman for one night, not a marching band. June touched the crocheted blanket. Thank you. Dinner's in 10 minutes. Everett's here, but he can be ignored. Everett sat at Naomi's kitchen table, shelling walnuts into 2 bowls. He wore a clean denim shirt and the same expression he wore while studying rotten porch boards. Furnace? He asked. Yes. He nodded toward the empty chair. Naomi served bean stew and cornbread. The kitchen was warmer than any room needed to be. A wood stove ticked near the pantry, and 3 cast-iron pans hung above it. June began to sweat inside her cardigan, but did not remove it. Everett cracked a walnut. "Could put a stove in your front room." "Not this week," June said. "Didn't say this week." "Don't make her a list," Naomi warned. "She has a list. Everybody needs a list, not while eating." They discussed the ceiling instead. Everett had removed the damaged section and would install new insulation and drywall once the room warmed enough for joint compound. The frame was sound. The window trim could be saved. "My mattress comes Monday," June said. Naomi smiled. "Look at you, buying furniture." "I've bought furniture before. Not for a life nobody else approved." Everett stopped cracking walnuts. June looked at Naomi. "That was too much," Naomi said. "Yes. Sorry." The apology came so simply that June did not know what to do with it. No explanation. No request to reassure Naomi that she had done nothing wrong. "Accepted," June said. Everett resumed with the walnuts. After dinner, June washed the bowls. Naomi objected once, then let her. They moved around each other in the kitchen without colliding. Naomi knew where everything belonged, but she did not take a spoon from June's hand or rearrange the dishes after June put them away. The ordinariness of it loosened something in her chest. Her phone rang as she finished drying the pot. Tessa. June went into the spare room and answered. "I've been calling," Tessa said. "My phone was in my bag." "Are you at the farm?" "I'm at Naomi's." "Why?" The furnace stopped. Tessa made the small sound June had expected. "I knew it." "Knew what?" "That place isn't livable. The furnace can be repaired." "What if this happened in January?" "Then I would call the same company in January. You can't keep pretending every problem is just a task on a list." June sat on the edge of the brass bed. That is how most problems get handled. "There's an apartment available at Briar Glen." "Tessa, just listen. It's less than 15 minutes from me. 1 bedroom, ground floor, maintenance included. They have emergency cords in every room. I don't want an emergency cord. Nobody wants one. That's why it's for emergencies. I have a house. You have 2 houses and neither one is working. The townhouse works. Then come back. To sleep where? We put your room back. You lean the mattress against the wall. We can finish it in an hour." June looked at the blue-flowered wallpaper. "And Kyle? He'll stay on the sofa until he finds something. He has 18 days. Tessa went quiet. "He found an apartment. They want first month, last month, and a deposit. That is common. He doesn't have all of it. He told me he had savings. He has some. How much is some? He wouldn't say. Then neither should I. Mom, he's not asking you for a gift. What is he asking for? A loan. He hasn't called me. He knew what you'd say. Then why are you calling?" Tessa exhaled. "Because somebody in this family has to keep things from breaking apart." June lowered her voice. "You cannot hold people together by moving them where you want. That isn't what I'm doing. It is exactly what you're doing. Briar Glen is a good place for someone who wants to live there. You haven't even seen it. I don't need to inspect every life I don't want." A pause followed. From Naomi's kitchen came a burst of laughter. Everett had said something June missed. The sound was low and unexpected, transformed by the wall. Tessa heard it. "Are you having fun?" The hurt in her question was so naked that June nearly changed the subject. "I ate dinner with Naomi and Everett. You barely know them. I'm getting to know them. While shutting us out. No. I'm learning how to open a door without giving away the room behind it." Tessa did not respond. June rubbed her thumb over the crocheted blanket. "I'm safe. The repairman is coming in the morning. I will not take the apartment. I will not come back tonight. And I will discuss money with Kyle when Kyle calls me. You sound rehearsed. I've had to repeat myself." Tessa ended the call without saying goodbye. June lay awake beneath the crocheted blanket, looking toward the farmhouse. The temperature inside had fallen to 47. According to the thermostat app the heating technician helped her activate. At midnight, it stopped dropping. The little heater and open cupboard doors were doing their modest work. The repairman arrived shortly after 8. A failed ignition control had shut down the furnace. The part cost enough to make June sit at Naomi's table before agreeing, but not enough to justify replacing the entire system that morning. By 11, warm air moved through the farmhouse again. June stood over the vent until her toes stopped aching. Then she closed the cupboard doors, unplugged the tiny heater, and carried her overnight bag home. A message from Kyle waited on her phone. "Tessa says you know about the apartment." June set the bag down. Another message appeared. "Can you loan me $2,000? I can pay you back when I'm working." She read it several times, not because the words were unclear. June thought of the sandwich shop, the equipment debt, the 2 car payments she had covered without telling Walter. She thought of Kyle watering the peace lily after she left, too late but gently. She called him. He answered with a careful hello. "I can't lend you $2,000, June said. "You mean you won't? I mean both. The house money does not exist yet. It will. It is for my retirement and the farm. So you can buy mattresses and fix porches, but you can't help me get a place." June looked at the vent, warm air lifting the hem of the curtain. "I helped you for 4 months. You gave me a sofa. I gave you a home. You decided it wasn't enough." Kyle breathed into the phone. Then, very quietly, he said, "I don't know how to do this." June sat at the table. For once he had not disguised the fear as inconvenience. "You find a cheaper apartment," she said, "or a room. You ask what deposit can be split into payments. You sell something you don't need. You tell the truth about what you can afford. That's your advice? That is what I would do. It's easy for you." June looked around the patched, imperfect kitchen. "No," she said, "it isn't." Kyle did not answer. June could hear a television on his end, some audience laughing at something that was probably not funny. "I'm not saying no because I want you to suffer," she said. "Could have fooled me. I'm saying no because every time I protect you from the cost of a decision, the next decision costs more. That sounds like Dad. He was right about some things. He didn't say that when you paid my car insurance." June went still. "He didn't know. I know." "How?" "I saw the transfer once." Neither of them spoke. June had carried that small deception through the last 7 years of her marriage, excusing it because Walter would have made Kyle feel ashamed. Now Kyle sounded ashamed anyway. "I shouldn't have done that behind his back," she said. "So, you regret helping me." "I regret making help into a secret. Secrets make everything look free." Kyle's voice lost some of its edge. "I don't have $2,000. "How much do you have?" "About 900. "Then you need a place that costs less than 900 to enter. Those places aren't exactly nice." "Neither is my cot," he sighed. "You really going to keep bringing up the cot? Probably until my back forgives it." That earned a breath that might have been half a laugh. June softened her voice. "Call the apartment manager. Ask whether the deposit can be paid over 3 months. If the answer is no, call other places. Not Tessa, not me." The places. "All right, and Kyle?" "What?" "Thank you for arranging the plumber." "How did you know?" Benton called with the estimate. "I was going to tell you." "Tell me before you authorize the work." "I know." It was not an apology, but it was the first conversation they ended without one of them hanging up. The mattress arrived Monday morning in a truck too large for the lane. One delivery man walked ahead, guiding the driver around the soft shoulder, while June stood at the gate, wondering whether she should have warned them. The younger man looked at the porch and said, "We're taking it through there. It's been reinforced." He stepped on a pale board. "Recently? Very." Everett had finished the ceiling and trim the previous afternoon. The new drywall was unpainted, a white rectangle bordered by gray joint compound. But the stain was gone. He had tightened the iron bed frame and found enough old wooden slats in the machine shed to support the mattress. The delivery men carried it inside, wrapped in thick plastic. June directed them to the downstairs room and tipped each $5. One thanked her. The other counted his while walking back to the truck. After they left, June cut the plastic away. The mattress rose slowly, clean and square. She put on new sheets, then spread her blue quilt over it. Without curtains or pictures, the room looked spare, almost temporary. Walter's single glove still lay on the dresser. June placed the framed anniversary photograph beside it. In the picture, Walter had one arm around her waist and cake frosting on his upper lip. He had refused to wipe it off because people kept laughing. June's hair was darker. Her red dress fit closer. They looked not young exactly, but certain there would be time. She set Walter's mug beside the frame, then carried it back to the kitchen. Some things could be used without becoming less sacred. That night, the mattress felt too firm. June turned twice, rearranged the pillow, and listened to the furnace start and stop. Through the window, she could see the pale slope of the pasture beneath the moon. She slept until 6:30. Kyle began sending photographs of rooms he was considering. One had green carpet and a microwave on top of a mini refrigerator. Another was a furnished bedroom in a ranch house owned by a retired man named Gerald, who worked nights and insisted on no frying fish indoors. "What do you think?" Kyle wrote. June typed 3 different answers before settling on, "Which one can you afford?" He chose Gerald's room. The deposit was $400. Kyle sold the large television that had occupied June's dresser and a set of golf clubs he had not used since before his sandwich shop failed. He accepted a temporary job, dispatching overnight deliveries for a building supply company. It was not the sales position he wanted, but it provided a pay stub. Tessa informed June of each development, as if issuing reports from a difficult country. "He'll be working nights. Gerald seems odd. The bathroom is shared," June replied. "Kyle is allowed to choose." Tessa did not like that answer. She also did not argue with it. Benton repaired the half-bath leak. The damaged flooring would need replacing before the house went on the market, and Marlene recommended a contractor. June authorized the expense, wrote the amount on the legal pad, and called Marlene to begin preparing the listing. Marlene asked whether Kyle had moved. "Saturday," June said. "Would you like me to come Monday?" "Yes." The decision left June shaky for the rest of the afternoon. She cleaned the same kitchen drawer twice and snapped at Naomi for carrying a bag of groceries inside without asking. "I bought onions for me," Naomi said. "The apples are for you. I can buy apples. I've seen your apples. They're disappointing." June apologized. Naomi accepted and stayed for tea. Saturday dawned rainy. June drove to town with flattened boxes, packing tape, and the foolish hope that Kyle would already be gone. He was not. His clothes filled the living room in black trash bags. 2 cardboard boxes sat by the door. Kyle was in the kitchen eating cereal from a mixing bowl. "I thought you had to be at Gerald's by noon," June said. "He works nights. He's asleep." "It's 10:30, he said after lunch. June looked at the bags. "Are those packed?" "Mostly." "Mostly is a dangerous word." He set down the spoon. "You've been waiting to say that, haven't you?" "No. Your father used to say it." "I know." Tessa arrived with coffee and a roll of contractor bags. She took in the room and immediately started assigning tasks. Kyle, clothes, Mom, kitchen. "I'll handle the garage." June put the tape on the table. "The kitchen is staying. I meant his things in the kitchen. He has 3 coffee cups and cereal. Fine. Then you can help me." June almost said she had not come to help Tessa. She looked at Kyle's face and decided the day contained enough sharp edges. They worked. Kyle had spread farther through the house than any of them understood. Phone chargers hid behind chairs. Receipts filled a kitchen drawer. A pair of shoes was under the guest bed. His shaving cream sat in June's shower, though he had complained for months that the water pressure was poor. Tessa filled bags quickly, holding up objects and asking, "Yours? Mom's? Trash?" Kyle answered until he stopped answering. "This is why people label," Tessa muttered. June wrapped the ceramic lamp from the guest room in a towel. People also ask before labeling. Tessa glanced at her, but let the remark pass. Around 1, Kyle carried his first load to Tessa's car. The silver sedan sat low beneath boxes. Gerald's house was across town. 2 trips would be necessary. June went into her bedroom. The maple frame remained bare. The mattress was gone. For a moment, she thought Kyle might have thrown it away. Then she saw the drag marks in the carpet leading toward the hall. In the garage, the mattress stood upright beside Walter's workbench, wedged behind the garment rack. Its lower edge had darkened where damp concrete stained the fabric. June's bent lampshade lay on top of the freezer, though she had taken the lamp itself to the farm. Tessa stood in front of the mattress holding, "Bless this mess." She did not hear June enter. Kyle had moved the braided rug, exposing an oily outline on the floor where June's bed had stood. One of Tessa's hospital corners still clung to the fitted sheet. The blue quilt was gone, but the setup remained visible in traces. The extension cord to the outlet, the folding TV tray, the cardboard box crushed by a bed leg. Tessa lowered the sign. "This is where it was?" June leaned against the doorframe. "You know where it was. I didn't see it after we finished. You brought out the lamp. Kyle was moving things. I was making the bed." "In my bedroom?" Tessa's face went pale. June had assumed they stood together and admired the completed arrangement. The truth was somehow smaller and sadder. Each had performed a portion of the act, trusting the other's description. Tessa had made the garage bed without standing back far enough to see it. "I thought there was more room," she said. "There wasn't." "And you slept here?" One night, Tessa looked toward the driveway door. There's no curtain. No, I thought the window was frosted. It isn't. Tessa's grip tightened around the wooden sign. Why didn't you say that? I asked. Why my bed was in the garage. The house made a soft settling sound. From outside, Kyle called for Tessa to unlock the car. She did not move. I told myself you were overreacting, she said. I kept telling myself that because the alternative was, her voice broke off. June waited. Tessa placed the sign face down on Walter's workbench. Dust marked its back. I'm gonna help Kyle, she said. She passed June without looking at her. No apology came. June was disappointed, though she had not known she expected one. By 4, Kyle's belongings were loaded. He stood in the empty living room with his hands in his jacket pockets. I left the Wi-Fi equipment, he said. They'll send a label. All right. Gerald says I can use the laundry Tuesdays and Fridays. That sounds organized. Sounds ridiculous. It might become ordinary. Kyle looked down the hallway. Dad really loved this house. So did I. You still do? June considered the watermark outside the bathroom, the drooping peace lily now recovering by the window, the wall where Walter's chair had left a faint shadow. Yes, she said. Then why sell it? Because loving a place is not the same as needing to stay. Kyle nodded, but his jaw tightened. At the door, he bent and hugged her. The movement was so sudden, June barely raised her arms in time. He smelled of laundry soap and the aftershave Walter used to buy him every Christmas. For 1 second, Kyle held her hard. Then he released her and walked out. Tessa followed with the last box. She stopped beside June. I'll come back tomorrow and clean the garage, she said. You don't have to. I know. June watched the silver sedan pull away with Kyle's life packed to the windows. The house was quiet after they left. Not peaceful, not yet, but empty. June walked from room to room, turning off lights Kyle had left on. The guest room, the bathroom, the primary bedroom with its bare frame and pale rectangles on the carpet. In the living room, the quiet seemed to gather around Walter's recliner, which nobody had moved. She sat in it. The chair still leaned slightly to the right. Walter had kept his wallet in his back pocket even at home, and over the years his weight had pressed the cushion unevenly. June slipped her hand between the seat and armrest and found 2 pennies, a cough drop without a wrapper, and a small metal washer. She placed the washer on the end table. Still fixing things, she said. The empty house offered no answer. June considered spending the night. She could sleep on the sofa, wake in her own kitchen, and pretend the last 3 weeks had been an argument rather than a departure. Her clothes would return to the closet. Her blue quilt would come back from the farm. The maple bed could be reassembled around a new mattress. By Tuesday, the garage might look like a garage again. The possibility was so complete that she felt it tug physically, like a current around her ankles. Then she remembered standing beside the farm vent while warm air lifted the curtain. She remembered asking Naomi for a room and not being made smaller by the asking. She remembered waking at 6:30 to pasture light. June stood. Before leaving, she carried the mattress from the garage with difficulty, dragging one end over the threshold and lowering it flat on the bedroom floor. The gray stain along the edge remained visible. She removed the sheet Tessa had tucked around it and placed the sheet in the laundry. The mattress would have to go. That was not revenge. It smelled faintly of gasoline. She wrote mattress disposal on a note for the cleanout company Marlene had recommended, locked the door, and drove to the farm. Tessa was there the next afternoon when June returned to meet the flooring contractor. Her silver sedan sat at the curb, trunk open. 2 garbage bags leaned against the garage. June entered through the raised door. The braided rug was gone. The folding table had been returned to its place beside the lawn chairs. Tessa stood at Walter's workbench, winding the extension cord into careful loops. You came, June said. I said I would. You also said you'd come when I was ready. Tessa's hands stopped. June regretted the remark. It was accurate, but accuracy could become its own appetite. I'm sorry, she said. That was unnecessary. No. Tessa set down the cord. It was earned. June waited. Tessa wore old jeans and one of Walter's sweatshirts, the green one from a plumbing supply company. The cuffs covered part of her hands. I took this from the donation pile, she said. After the funeral, I wondered where it went. I should have asked. You should have. Tessa nodded. Do you want it back? No. That seemed to hurt her more than if June had demanded it. The garage was clean except for the workbench, freezer, and stacked bins. Bless this mess had disappeared. What did you do with the sign? June asked. Threw it away. I might have wanted it. Tessa looked at her in alarm. June let the silence sit for 1 second, then smiled. You're making jokes now? Tessa asked. Apparently. That was mean. A little. Tessa laughed despite herself. The sound ended quickly. I'm sorry about the bed, she said. The words came plain. Without the lead-in, June had learned to distrust. Tessa gripped the edge of the workbench. Not because it looked bad. Not because you left. I'm sorry we decided your comfort was the easiest comfort to take away. June looked at her daughter. Tessa continued before June could speak. I kept telling myself it was temporary. Then when you got upset, I thought if I could prove it was practical, I wouldn't have to admit what we had done. I didn't even stand in here and look at the whole thing. No. I made the bed and went inside. I know that now. I should have known then. June leaned against the freezer. The apology did not restore the night she had spent fully dressed beside the lawnmower. It did not erase Tessa kissing the top of her head and saying she might enjoy her little space. But it did not ask June to erase those things either. Why? June asked. Tessa's eyes filled, though her voice remained steady. Because Dad died, and you kept saying you were fine. That doesn't explain the garage. No, it explains me taking over. The garage was just where taking over went. June swallowed. I was scared you'd stop functioning, Tessa said. You sat on the laundry room floor for hours after the ambulance left. You didn't answer questions. You let the tea go cold in your hand. After that, every time you forgot something, I thought it was happening again. So you labeled my medicine, and your freezer, and Walter's clothes. I needed things to have places. People too? Tessa nodded, crying now. People most of all. June crossed the garage and took the extension cord from the bench. She wrapped the loose end beneath the last loop the way Walter always had. I cannot live inside the place your fear assigns me, she said. I know. No, honey, you're beginning to know. Tessa wiped her face with Walter's sweatshirt sleeve. What happens now? We learn how to ask. Can I hug you? June opened her arms. Tessa held her without collapsing into her. June did not promise that everything was fixed. She did not say the farm was a temporary experiment or that she would reconsider Briar Glen. When they separated, Tessa stepped back instead of adjusting June's collar. The flooring contractor arrived 10 minutes later. Tessa listened while June discussed the bathroom. She offered no opinions until June asked whether the gray sample looked too dark. Yes, Tessa said. It looks like a waiting room. June chose the warmer brown. Marlene listed the house after the new flooring went down, and 2 rooms were painted. A cleaning crew scrubbed the garage floor, though the oily rectangle where June's bed had stood never disappeared completely. Everett and Naomi helped move the furniture June wanted to keep. Walter's dresser, the ceramic key dish from the metal file box, the plaid sofa, after Everett announced it would fit through the front door only if the front door apologized, and 3 boxes of photographs. Kyle came for Walter's recliner. He arrived in a borrowed van after working all night. His eyes were shadowed, and his shirt bore the logo of the building supply company. You're sure? He asked, resting one hand on the chair. It always leaned your way. I thought that was his wallet. That too. Kyle smiled faintly. Gerald doesn't like big furniture. Where will you put it? My room. If we can get it through the hall. Everett examined Kyle, the chair, and the van. Angle it. Which way? Kyle asked. Everett pointed. Kyle waited for more. That was the instruction, Naomi said. They loaded the chair without damage. Kyle thanked Everett and Naomi, then stood beside June near the pickup. Tessa told me what she said to you. June did not ask for details. All right, she thinks I should apologize. What do you think? Kyle looked toward the house. A real estate sign stood in the yard, Marlene's red glasses smiling from the corner. I think you would have kept letting me stay if we hadn't moved the bed. Probably, so I ruined it for myself. That is not the part I need you to understand. He kicked a maple leaf away from his shoe. I'm not good at this. At apologizing, at knowing which part you need. June considered helping him. The old reflex rose quickly. Give the words, ease the shame, finish the task. She let it pass. Then take your time, she said. But don't take forever. Kyle nodded. Before climbing into the van, he looked at Naomi and Everett tying Walter's dresser in the truck bed. You have help, he said. It sounded almost like an accusation, almost like relief. Yes, June answered. The first offer on the house arrived 2 days after it was listed. It was low and included a request that June pay for a new roof, though the existing roof had 7 useful years according to the inspection. Marlene said, "They're fishing." June declined. The second offer was closer but depended on the buyers selling their own house. The third arrived after a weekend of steady showings. It came from an adult couple relocating for work. Their price was below Marlene's hopeful number and above June's private minimum. They asked for the dining table and wanted possession in 30 days. June sat at the farm kitchen table while Marlene explained the terms by phone. Walter's old table was scarred by forks, hot pans, and one Thanksgiving when Kyle tried to open a bottle without a corkscrew. June had planned to take it. She looked at the smaller stoneware table Naomi and Everett had eaten at. 6 people could sit there if they liked one another. "Counter without the dining table," June said. Marlene laughed softly. "I thought you might." They settled the next morning. June signed the sale agreement at Marlene's office with Tessa, present by invitation. Kyle was sleeping after work and did not ask to attend. The paperwork was ordinary, the pen cheap, the coffee burned. When June reached the signature line, her hand paused. Tessa said nothing. June signed. Back at the farm, Everett and Naomi placed Walter's dresser against the repaired bedroom wall. The wood looked darker in the country light. The plaid sofa dominated the front room exactly as predicted. "It's terrible," Naomi said. "It's family," June replied. "Same thing, often." Everett installed the black porch light after replacing the damaged wire. At dusk, June switched it on. A clear gold circle spread over the temporary boards and the first few feet of yard. The house looked less abandoned. That night, June dreamed she had forgotten something in town. She moved through the old house opening drawers, but every drawer contained grass. Walter stood outside calling her, though she could not tell from which side of the house. She woke before dawn, with the new mattress cold beneath her and the sale agreement's numbers running through her mind. In 29 days, strangers would own the rooms where almost half her life had happened. June rose, put on Walter's jacket, and went to the porch. The new light was still burning. She switched it off and stood in the dark until the pasture slowly returned. The dark did not feel empty anymore. She could hear sheep shifting below the hill, the soft clack of a gate, water moving somewhere beneath the fog. A light came on in Naomi's kitchen. Another person awake, another kettle beginning its work. June went inside and made coffee. The days before closing filled quickly. Every drawer in the townhouse required a decision, and every decision seemed to uncover 6 smaller ones. June hired movers for the large furniture and carried what she could in the pickup. She refused Tessa's suggestion of color-coded labels, then accepted a simpler system written in black marker. Farm, donate, trash. Tessa asked before writing on each box. The first few times, her questions sounded stiff. "Do you want the mixing bowls?" "Yes." "All of them?" "No." The yellow set. "Can I donate the others?" "Yes." By the third afternoon, the asking no longer sounded like a performance. It sounded like 2 women working. Kyle came when his night schedule allowed. Sometimes that meant arriving at 7 in the morning as June was unlocking the house. He moved slowly after 12 hours of dispatching trucks and had begun drinking coffee so strong that even Everett would have respected it. Gerald's house was working out better than Kyle had predicted. "He has rules," Kyle said while wrapping drinking glasses in newspaper. "The fish thing. No showers after 11. The thermostat stays at 68. Sounds reasonable. He labels his leftovers. Tessa would like him. I'm not introducing them. They'd form a government." From the other room, Tessa called, "I heard that." Kyle grinned at June. He still had not apologized. He helped, brought his own tape, and stopped asking about the sale price, but the missing words sat between them. June noticed herself waiting for them whenever they were alone. Then she resented the waiting. An apology should not become another service she required on schedule. Walter's clothes took an entire Sunday. June had moved the flannel shirts she wanted. What remained filled half the guest closet, suits from a life that no longer required suits, work pants, sweaters, fishing shirts, and a blue windbreaker Walter wore every spring, regardless of temperature. Tessa lifted the windbreaker from its hanger. "This still smells like him." June held out her hand. It smelled like cedar closet blocks and faintly of Walter's aftershave. The scent was weak enough that June wondered whether they were both inventing it. "He wore that the day we signed for this house," she said. Tessa smiled. He hated it. He hated the closing costs. He told everybody the lawyer charged him $12 for each signature. He made up that number. I know. Tessa folded the windbreaker across her lap. Can I keep it? June almost said no. The refusal rose before thought, an instinct to preserve Walter by keeping his things close to the person who had known him longest. Then she remembered the plumbing sweatshirt Tessa wore in the garage and how she had offered to return it. Yes, June said. Take it. Tessa pressed the fabric to her face once, then placed it in her box. They worked without turning every shirt into a ceremony. Walter's stained undershirts went into the trash. His good winter coat went to a community shelter. June kept the brown sweater he had worn in their anniversary photograph. Tessa found a pair of swim trunks printed with orange sailboats and laughed until she had to sit down. He wore those on the cruise, she said. He bought them on the cruise because the airline lost his suitcase. He wore black socks with them. He said his feet burned easily. They burned because they were embarrassed. Kyle arrived in time to find them laughing on the guest room floor, the sailboat trunks held between them. Those should be destroyed, he said. They might fit you, Tessa said. I'll burn the house down. Too late, June said. It's under contract. The laughter faded, but gently. Kyle sat against the wall and picked up one of Walter's fishing shirts. Can I have this? Yes. You didn't even look. I know which one it is. Kyle ran his thumb over the pocket. Walter had repaired a tear there with green thread that did not match. He never took me fishing after I moved back. You didn't ask? I thought he would. He probably thought you would. Kyle folded the shirt badly. Tessa reached toward it, then caught herself and pulled her hand back. June saw the movement. So did Tessa. Neither commented. When the last closet was empty, they carried the boxes downstairs. Kyle took donations to his borrowed van. Tessa swept the room. June stood before the open closet and remembered Walter's jackets leaning into hers until she complained he was crossing the line. The line was gone. At the farm, the boxes accumulated along the dining room wall. June unpacked only what she needed. There was no point filling cupboards merely because objects had survived the trip. Naomi renewed the pasture agreement at the same rate. You could charge more, Naomi said, signing at the kitchen table. I could. You checked. I did. And you maintain the lower fences, keep the grass down, and notice when my furnace is silent. That last part wasn't in the old lease. It is now. Naomi smiled. Then I'm underpaying. They shook hands anyway. Everett produced an estimate for rebuilding the porch in spring. Materials had risen since his first calculation. June looked at the number, looked through the window at the pale temporary boards, and moved the project down the legal pad. April, she said. May if it rains. April if it doesn't. June if your name confuses the schedule. Naomi groaned. That was terrible. Everett appeared satisfied. The sale proceeds would allow June to repair the porch, replace the furnace when necessary, and leave the remainder invested for her living expenses. The numbers worked if she was careful. They did not make her wealthy. They made her less likely to become dependent on the people she loved, which felt richer than she knew how to explain. The movers came for the dining table 4 days before closing. One man took a corner too quickly and scraped the front door frame. June gasped. The mover apologized. Kyle, who had arrived straight from work, examined the mark and said it could be touched up. You sound like Dad, June told him. I was going to blame the wind. The table fit into the farm dining room, only after Everett removed the door from its hinges. Once inside, it occupied more space than June expected. Its surface bore the familiar pale ring from a hot casserole and a deep scratch Tessa made while cutting fabric with a utility knife. Naomi walked around it. This thing expects company. It always did. Kyle stood near the window, looking from the table to the kitchen. Where are you putting the smaller one? Upstairs for sewing. You don't sew? I might start. You hate sewing? I might put bills on it. That sounds more like you. They ate sandwiches at the newly arrived table. Everett had gone home to rest his back. Naomi left after lunch to check the sheep. Tessa was meeting the cleaning crew in town. For the first time since the argument in the front room, June and Kyle were alone at the farm. He carried their plates to the sink. He rinsed them, then looked around for the dishwasher. There isn't one, June said. You're kidding. There wasn't one when your grandmother lived here. She also churned butter. No, she bought margarine. Kyle washed the plates by hand. June dried them. After a while, he said, I didn't take your room because of my back. June kept her eyes on the plate. The sofa was uncomfortable, he added, but that wasn't why. Why did you? Kyle set a fork in the drainer. Dad's dresser was in there. Yes, I could smell his stuff. The drawer liners, that old shoe polish he used. June folded the towel over the oven handle. I wasn't sleeping, he continued. Every night on the sofa, I could see his chair. I kept thinking he'd come in and tell me to get my feet off the coffee table. He would have. I know. Kyle turned off the water. Tessa said moving into the bedroom might help. Then she said, "You didn't use the whole room anyway." I knew that was stupid. But you let her say it. I wanted it to be true. June leaned against the counter. I didn't know how to say I wanted Dad's room, Kyle said. It sounded pathetic. So I made it about interviews and my back. Then once we moved your bed, I knew we'd done something awful. You seemed pleased. I was relieved you weren't yelling. I was numb from the dentist. I mean, emotionally. That too. He looked toward the dining room. Walter's fishing shirt was visible inside an open box. I'm sorry, Kyle said. Not just for the garage. I'm sorry I made needing you into the same thing as owning your help. I kept thinking if you could afford something, it didn't cost you. June's throat tightened. Kyle rubbed both hands over his face. That sounded better in the car. It sounded all right here. I should have helped with the house. Yes, I should have paid you rent. Yes, I should have. You do not have to inventory every failure. I thought that was what you wanted. I wanted you to understand one. The bed? The person in it? Kyle looked at her. June crossed the kitchen and hugged him. This time, he did not grip her as if she might disappear. He rested his cheek against her hair and breathed. I'm still not lending you $2,000, she said. He laughed into her shoulder. I figured. He left for work an hour later. Before going, he carried the dining table leaves upstairs without being asked. He placed them in the empty bedroom and returned with dust on his shirt. At the door, he glanced toward the pasture. It's not as bad as I remember. The sheep will be devastated. I meant the farm. I know. Still no dishwasher. Still no free room. He smiled, but his eyes remained serious. I know that too. On the final evening before closing, June returned to the townhouse with Tessa and Kyle. The cleaning crew had finished. Every room echoed. The buyers would take possession the next afternoon. June had one last set of keys, Marlene's card, and a small cardboard box of things found after the movers left. Walter's washer from beside the recliner, a spare porch key, 2 photographs, and the white kitchen bowl Tessa had placed on the dresser. They ordered dinner from the diner and ate on the kitchen floor because every chair was gone. Kyle had sausage in his omelet. Tessa stole half his toast. June drank coffee from a paper cup and looked at the clean rectangle where the table had stood. Nobody tried to turn the meal into a farewell speech. They argued about whether Walter had dropped Dale Harkins's pie before or after, calling the wind sneaky. Tessa remembered an electrical outage when Walter attempted to make coffee on the gas grill. Kyle insisted he had once seen a raccoon in the attic. June maintained it was a squirrel and that Kyle had been the one in the attic. When the cartons were empty, they carried them to the trash. Kyle checked the windows. Tessa asked June whether she wanted the thermostat set at 68. June said 65. Tessa set it at 65. At the garage, all 3 stopped. The oil stain remained on the concrete, darker at the edges. The freezer had gone to Everett. Walter's workbench had been moved to the farm machine shed, leaving 4 clean squares where its legs had protected the floor. June walked to the center of the space. This is colder than I remember, Tessa said. It was colder that night, June replied. Kyle placed his hands in his pockets. I'm sorry, Tessa said. Me too. June nodded. She did not say it was all right. It had not been all right. She reached for the wall switch and turned off the garage light. Inside, Tessa and Kyle waited near the front door while June walked through the house one last time. She touched the kitchen counter, the laundry room sink, the place beside the hall where Walter had marked furniture height instead of anyone's growth. In the primary bedroom, evening light lay across the empty carpet. June stood where the bed had been. Then she left the room and closed the door. Outside, she locked the house. The key turned with the familiar small resistance it had always had. Tessa and Kyle walked toward their cars, giving her the space without being asked. June remained on the porch with the key in her palm. For the first time, leaving was not something her children had done to her. She slipped the key into her purse and went down the steps. Kyle stood beside the borrowed van. Tessa waited by her sedan, arms folded against the evening chill. Neither asked whether June was all right. That kindness felt new. I'll see you tomorrow, Tessa said. At closing. Do you want me there? Yes. Tessa nodded. 10 o'clock. Kyle looked embarrassed. I have to work. I know. I can try to trade. Don't. You need the hours. He glanced back at the house. Call me after? I will. They left in separate directions. June waited until both vehicles disappeared, then climbed into Walter's pickup and drove toward the farm. At the edge of town, she pulled over. The house key pressed through the lining of her purse as if it had acquired weight. She took it out and held it beneath the dome light. Brass scratched near the teeth, a round blue cover, Walter added, because June used to confuse it with the farm key. She had expected the final lock to sever something. Instead, the old house still existed behind her. The farm existed ahead. Walter was absent from both. June put the key in the ceramic dish on the passenger seat and continued driving. Closing took 43 minutes. Marlene sat beside June, although she was not required to. Tessa occupied the next chair and read every page upside down while pretending not to. The buyers had already signed. June initialed the repair acknowledgement, confirmed the transfer instructions, and answered questions about taxes and insurance. Nobody asked what the house meant to her. That would not have made the transaction more honorable. It would only have made it longer. When the closing agent slid the keys toward the center of the table, June placed the blue-covered one on top. That's everything, the woman said. June waited. Apparently it was. Outside, Marlene hugged her and handed her a small potted plant with glossy green leaves. This is nearly impossible to kill, she said. Is that a challenge? Please don't take it as one. Tessa carried the plant to the truck. I thought we could get lunch. Are you asking? Yes. Then yes. They went to the diner where June and Walter had eaten sausage against medical advice. Tessa ordered a salad, then took 3 of June's fries. She discussed work, a plumbing problem in her own house, and the fact that Kyle's borrowed van had developed a squeal. For 20 minutes, she did not mention the farm, the sale, or Briar Glen. Finally, she put down her fork. Did the money transfer? This morning. Are you comfortable with where you put it? Yes. Tessa nodded. June waited for the follow-up questions. None came. I set aside enough for the furnace and porch, June volunteered. The rest will stay invested for expenses. That sounds sensible. You can say if you think it doesn't. I know. June reached across the table and touched her hand. Tessa turned hers over, palm up. After lunch, Tessa followed June to the farm because the nearly indestructible plant would not sit upright in the pickup. She carried it into the kitchen and set it beside the window. Here? She asked, a little farther from the glass. Tessa moved it 6 inches. Perfect. It was such a small thing that June nearly missed how much it mattered. The first snow came before the furnace failed again. It covered the temporary porch boards and turned the pasture fence into a thin black drawing. Naomi's sheep clustered in the lower field, their wool collecting white caps until they shook themselves. June learned the farmhouse's winter habits. The dining room window whistled in a north wind. The upstairs pipes needed a slow drip during hard freezes. The kitchen floor stayed cold no matter how warm the room became. The furnace groaned, clicked, and continued working. June kept the heating company's number beside the phone. She also kept wood stacked near Naomi's stove and an overnight bag packed in the downstairs closet. Preparation felt different from fear when it left room for choice. Loneliness did not vanish because the house belonged to her. Some evenings, June reached for a second plate before remembering. Sometimes she woke on the firm mattress certain Walter had called from the kitchen. On their anniversary, she made his favorite pot roast, burned the onions, and ate 1 serving while snow pressed against the bedroom window. Then Naomi arrived carrying wine. I didn't invite you, June said at the door. I know. Is this one of those situations where you ignore my boundaries? Yes. June considered her. Come in. Everett followed from the truck with a pecan pie. He had bought it from the bakery because, according to Naomi, his last attempt at crust could have roofed a shed. They ate at Walter's dining table. Nobody asked June to tell a romantic story. Naomi complained about frozen troughs. Everett said the furnace sounded wrong, and June told him to chew his pie. Afterward, when they had gone, the house felt quiet rather than deserted. Tessa began visiting on Sundays, but not every Sunday. She called first. For a while, she asked permission for absurdly small things. Can I use this towel? Yes. Can I put my coat on the chair? It is a chair. Can I make coffee? Tessa? If you ask before every breath, we will both pass out. Her daughter looked offended, then laughed. They found a middle ground. Tessa still organized when anxious, but she began announcing it. I am about to make an unnecessary list, she would say. June sometimes let her. Kyle came less often. Night dispatch exhausted him. And Gerald expected rent on time. When the borrowed van's squeal became a grinding sound, Kyle took the bus for 2 weeks rather than ask June for money. Tessa told her this with visible concern. He has a 40-minute ride each way. He'll survive. You could offer the truck. I need the truck. I know. I'm only saying it's hard. It is. Tessa looked at her. You can admit something is hard without fixing it? I'm learning. Kyle bought an old sedan from another dispatcher. The heater worked only on its highest setting, and one rear window had been permanently sealed with clear tape. He brought it to the farm the first Sunday in April. Walter would have called the car a rolling apology. June walked around it. How much? Less than the transmission is probably worth. That isn't reassuring. It passed inspection. Legally or spiritually? Kyle smiled. Gerald's mechanic checked it. He had come to help Everett begin the porch. The temporary boards came up pale and clean against the older rod. Everett inspected each one and set the reusable pieces aside. Kyle wore Walter's fishing shirt over a thermal undershirt. He asked questions, occasionally too many. Everett answered about half. When Kyle tried to lift 2 long beams alone, June saw his face tighten. Put one down, she said. I've got it. Everett looked over. Put one down. Kyle put one down. They worked for 3 weekends. June paid for materials and Everett's labor. Kyle refused money, but accepted dinner. Naomi helped when the sheep allowed it, and criticized every crooked screw, regardless of who drove it. The new porch stretched the width of the house, solid beneath June's feet. Everett built 1 broad step instead of 2 narrow ones, not because June needed an elderly accommodation, but because the old proportions had always looked foolish. On the last afternoon, Kyle installed the black porch light after Everett checked the wire twice. He switched it on. Even in daylight, the bulb glowed warmly. Looks good, June said. Kyle rubbed sawdust from his sleeve. Dad bought that? He did. Only took him 6 years to install it. He was waiting for us. Kyle glanced at her, unsure whether she was joking. So was I, June said. He understood then. The building supply company offered Kyle a permanent dispatch position in June. The pay was modest, the hours difficult, and the health insurance better than anything he had carried during his sandwich shop years. He accepted without describing it as temporary. He stayed at Gerald's house. The rules became stories instead of complaints. Gerald fried fish outdoors on a portable burner every other Friday and invited Kyle to share it. Tessa stopped delivering reports. June learned changes in Kyle's life from Kyle. Summer softened the farm. Tall grass moved beyond the fences, and Naomi's sheep dotted the lower pasture like scraps of cloud. June planted tomatoes near the kitchen steps, though Walter had always claimed that location received the wrong afternoon sun. He had been wrong. She harvested enough to leave paper bags on Naomi's porch, Everett's truck seat, and Tessa's kitchen counter. Kyle took 6 and returned the bag folded neatly. June painted the repaired bedroom ceiling. She chose a warm cream for the walls and hung the anniversary photograph above Walter's dresser. His single work glove stayed beside it until one morning she carried the glove to the machine shed and placed it on the workbench. Tools covered the bench now. Everett's measuring square, Kyle's forgotten screwdriver, June's new work gloves. Walter's glove looked less abandoned among them. The day marking 1 year since his death arrived hot and still. June visited the cemetery alone in the morning. She brought no flowers because Walter used to call cut flowers vegetation on a deadline. She brushed grass from the stone and told him the porch had finally been rebuilt. You would hate what lumber costs, she said. A mower moved in the distance. Birds argued in an oak tree. June rested her hand against Walter's name. I sold the house, she said. Those words were harder. She told him about Kyle's job, Tessa's Sundays, Naomi's sheep, and the tomatoes he would have planted in the wrong place. She did not ask whether he approved. By then, June understood that the question had always been hers. Before leaving, she placed the blue-covered townhouse key at the base of the stone. She had kept it after closing, without knowing why. It opened nothing now. The following autumn, June invited everyone to dinner on the anniversary of her move to the farm. She did not call it that. She simply said Saturday at 5 and told them not to bring anything unless they intended to take leftovers home. Naomi arrived first with bread she claimed was accidentally fresh. Everett brought cider. Tessa came with a vase of grocery store flowers and waited while June decided where to place them. Kyle was late. At 5:30, tires sounded on the lane. His old sedan stopped beside the porch, heater roaring, though the evening was mild. "Sorry," he said, coming through the door. "Gerald needed help moving a cabinet." "Did he pay you?" "In fish." "Then you're a professional." They sat at Walter's table, June at one end, no place left empty at the other. Naomi and Everett argued over the salt. Tessa asked for the pot roast recipe and looked offended when June admitted she measured nothing. Kyle told them Gerald had started labeling his outdoor fish seasonings. The farmhouse carried voices easily. Laughter moved into the front room, up the stairs, through the floorboards. The plaid sofa waited beneath the window for whoever wanted coffee later. After dinner, wind rose outside. Rain struck the porch roof, sudden and hard. Kyle checked his phone. "Road's going to be ugly," he said. Tessa looked at June, then deliberately looked away. Kyle put the phone down. "Would it be all right if I stayed?" "I can take the sofa." "The guest room is made up," June said. "You sure?" "Yes, just tonight." "I heard you." He smiled. "Right." Tessa helped Naomi with the dishes. Everett stood on the porch testing the new railing, as if weather might have changed his opinion of it. Kyle carried the extra table leaf upstairs to get it out of the hall, though nobody had asked him. June went to her bedroom for another sweater. The room overlooked the pasture, now silver beneath the rain. Her bed stood against the warm cream wall, blue quilt smooth across the mattress. Walter's dresser held the anniversary photograph, a lamp with a new shade, and the ceramic dish. Inside it lay June's farm key. Downstairs, Tessa called. "Mom, where do you want the flowers after we clear the table?" June picked up her sweater. "I'm coming," she answered. She switched off the bedroom light and left the door open.